you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Right answer for you.
Yeah. I was going to ask, but it's better not to ask that question. I'm not going to ask it.
Exactly.
As long as it happens.
I know. And so can we date it
Just
in
simple.
March?
Yeah, it was an easy answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
It could have been a bigger discussion.
Yeah, I don't want to.
And then
Appreciate that.
only if,
And if not, yes, I will
get a
be
new-
here.
you'll get a new
I will get a new one.
otherwise
I'm here.
you got.
I'm good to go. Thank you, Kurt.
Good. Good. No, I understand your choice.
Oh, it's starting up in such a timely fashion. I'm just gonna, because I know this.
Okay.
Because
What are you going to do with all your spare time?
I should have no problem with this now. It's jinxing it or what? But we're not going to have a thing. No, we're not. Okay.
I'm still here.
Yes. Well, that's okay. Then it won't happen, right?
Right on time here.
So what's the order of the meetings tonight?
We're going to be,
Right there.
Yeah.
after the presentations from Underready River Co-op, so we're going to do.
I'm sure I will see you later.
Dave just called. Hurry up, because I got to start the meeting.
Are you working at Cots now anymore?
I'm not.
We're going
All right,
So I just wanted to know if you're going to support that resolution.
most likely, yes.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
26.
Okay,
my
we will
understanding is.
bring the meeting to order. We'll bring the meeting to order, please.
How are you?
Thank you. So we will get the meeting started. In the absence of President Nodell, I would like a nomination for an acting president for the evening. Councillor Busher.
Yes, I'd like to now nominate Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? President Wright, thank you.
All right, thank you. First item on the agenda is the agenda. Councilor Roof?
Yes. Thank you. I'll move to amend and adopt the agenda as follows. Remove from the agenda item 2.01, report retired Navy Chief Joe Gilmond, head of the local VFW, regarding christening of the USNS Burlington, oral per COS Low. Add to the consent agenda item 5.50, communication CT office regarding accountability log with the action to waive the reading, accept the communication, and place it on file. Remove from the agenda item 6.03, report Councilor Roof Chair, Public Safety Committee regarding homelessness, oral per Councilor Roof. Note written material for agenda item 6.04, communication Eileen Blackwood, City Attorney, and Anthea Dexter Cooper, Assistant City Attorney regarding Church Street Marketplace mural. Everyone loves a parade in Burlington, Vermont, per the City Attorney's office. And add to the agenda item 6.05, resolution appoint an inclusive task force to reimagine the Everyone Loves a Parade mural and report recommendations to the mayor and the city council. Councilor Shannon, per Council President Nodell. Note revised version of this agenda item per Councilor Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roof. Any discussion on the proposed amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have our agenda, and I would like to ask everyone to join with me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight, and we will get into the agenda here. The first item on our agenda is item number 2. Item number 2, actually, excuse me, has been removed from the agenda. We moved to item number 3, which is a presentation from the Onion River Co-op, their yearly presentation. John Tashiro, come on up, and we always love hearing your report. Welcome.
Thank you.
What's your favorite night? What's your favorite night?
Thank you for your patience. Good evening, City Councilors and the Mayor. Thank you for your patience. We're just trying to get the presentation up. And really today is really an opportunity that we look forward to every year to share the performance of the City Market Onion River Co-op over the last financial year, as well as also wanted to provide you an update of how we have progressed since our South End expansion. And as you're waiting, you'll see my lovely assistant, Allison Hope, sharing our annual goodie bags to all of you. Once again, really just wanted to thank the city and councilors for your tremendous support of the co-op and enabling us to continue to make the impact that we so seek to do as part of our mission at the co-op. So as in previous years, I have shared a similar presentation with you. In many respects, this presentation is very similar to previous years as well. As you may recall, At one point, this was really a requirement from City Market to share and present to City Council as part of the agreement we had with the lease of the land at the downtown City Market. But since we had purchased the land, although it's no longer a requirement, we feel that it's very important to keep the city informed of our continued progress, especially as we continue to focus our efforts in how we best serve our members, our customers, and the community at large. In terms of really our mission, we have a mission called the Global End, and as part of that, really our focus are some of the things that are represented here on the slide you see before you as it relates to really meeting the needs of the community at large, and also supporting certainly through our focus with strengthening local food systems and addressing insecurity, food insecurity. We offer, as the co-op, a variety of products and services that cover everything from organic and local products to conventional goods. This is something that we have done over the years, and certainly as part of our agreement with the city when we made the transition from the Old North End to the downtown location, we made this significant shift, and we've continued with that model that we have also expanded now to the South End. As it relates to our performance in 2017, you may be aware that as a single store co-op up until November of last year, we generated a little under $42 million in annual sales. It is a well-known fact that as a single store co-op last year, we remained one of the busiest and highest selling single store co-ops in the country. This is actually quite an extraordinary point, something that I can't emphasize enough, considering the certainly size and the population of Burlington compared to many other cities we are comparing ourselves across the country. In terms of the sales contribution from our members, we have now over 13,500 members, which is once again a new milestone for us. They generate close to 70% of our annual sales of that $42 million. And in terms of our emphasis around local products and offering those product options, 40% of our annual sales is generated from local products. So once again, from a co-op standpoint, we continue to really stay focused in how we best deliver in supporting the local community, our local businesses, and our local farmers and vendors in terms of providing local products. Another area that we're very proud of is about how we really look at the well-being of our employees. Up until November of last year, we had about 237 employees. But with the expansion with the South End, we ended up hiring approximately 100 new employees, a pretty significant shift for the co-op, of which close to 80% are full-time. One thing to point that in a traditional sort of food retail environment, it is usually the case that that is the opposite. Food retailers tend to hire part-time staff to minimize their labor. At the co-op, and this is a long tradition in the co-op world, we have emphasized the need to really hire as many full-time staff, so we do have that continuity that hopefully you experience when you come to the co-op in terms of that customer experience and customer service. And with our staff, over 60% live in Burlington, which is once again another area that we're quite proud of. Also, as we look at some of the benefits that provide our employees, this is a topic of great discussion around how compensation works for our employees. We take a very much a holistic view. It's a combination of certainly wages, but also general benefits. And I know there are a number of conversations that are happening in the broader marketplace about the $15 wage. We have a union environment, and when we do prepare for negotiations, we certainly refer to the Joint Fiscal Office livable wage statistics that we use as part of our negotiations. In addition to that, we offer a number of other benefits to employees which we think provides that holistic approach, something that we're very proud of. And it is because of that we have such great continuity with our employees at the co-op. Just recently, in the last few weeks, we had employees that were celebrating their 20th year at the co-op who were actually in the same positions they were 20 years ago. And it was a wonderful story to think about how, in this case, Mary Mangus, a produce buyer, had really started the co-op 20 years ago buying produce and has since evolved with the organization, so much so that she enjoys her job today to now certainly do produce buying on a much larger scale. But something, once again, from our standpoint, is very important and a testament to how our employers are very satisfied working at the co-op. You may also know that for the second year in a row, we've been designated one of the best places to work in Vermont. When we did this survey a year ago for the first time, our intention wasn't necessarily to receive the designation. Our intention was to understand how we could improve. And we just so happened to receive that designation, something that we certainly were very happy about, but that was not the main purpose nor goal. This year, so in actually December of 2017, we administered that same survey. Now this is right after our Southland expansion, which, as you can imagine, was quite a significant lift for the co-op. And we have once again received that designation of one of the best places to work in Vermont. Once again, for us, it's all about the learning on how we can continue to improve to make our work environment at the co-op the best it can be. In terms of how we support the community, and certainly a key focus area about how we provide healthy food access to the entire community, and certainly focusing on those members and customers that are using such resources as around the programs of 3 Square Vermont, the equivalent of the Food Stamps program, or WIC. And if we go to the next slide, we reference them as part of our greater focus with Food for All members. These are members that are on some form of federally subsidized program. And it's a number that we certainly track very closely. They make up about 10% of our current membership. And you have certainly asked in the past about how we're continuing to allow and enable that healthy food access to those who may be in slightly more difficult economic times. This is really a testament, once again, to see, you'll notice how in the last year we have really put an effort to continue to increase that contribution within our overall sales. We've done this through a number of programs. First of all, we offer a 10% discount for those who qualify under the Food for All program. We had also launched a Co-op Basics program, which is an everyday low price program, as of April 2 years ago, and we have increased the number of products that qualify for those products, and that, I feel, in combination has enabled more healthy food access for those members who could use that healthy food most. Member work, another key member benefit to our 13,000 plus members. As you'll notice, the number of hours that our members have volunteered throughout the year, of which over 90% is conducted through our 23 nonprofit partners, which you see listed to the right there. Once again, another way for us to contribute to support the community. And when we did tally up the total number of member hours of over 15,000, that's the equivalent of approximately 7.5 full-time staff positions. Another way we support the community is through our Rally for Change program. Now this is really based on the generosity of our members and our customers that shop at the co-op. Up until last year, we were generating approximately $15,000 to $16,000 a month. And that's the adding up of those quarters, nickels, pennies that you as customers and the community donate when we ask whether or not customers or members would be interested in rounding up. Half of that Rally for Change amount every month is designated to the Chittenden Emergency Food Shelf. That's in line with our focus around food insecurity. The other 50% is divided between a 10% nonprofit partner and a 40% nonprofit partner. Those two nonprofit partners rotate every month, while the 50% partner in the food shelf remains consistent. And so when we looked at the last year in 2017, we tallied up approximately $131,000 that went toward the food shelf's efforts, something, once again, we were very proud of. Another area is around our annual COTS tree sale. You will probably, maybe if you're in the store especially, in that late November, early December time, you will smell the fresh scent of pine all across the store. We unload hundreds of trees to essentially sell to our members and our customers and donate really the profits of that program to COTS. And I don't think I need to say a whole lot more about COTS, a phenomenal organization that does great work, and this is just one way for us to also promote and support their work. Certainly in terms of our patronage refund, every year with members who have shopped at the co-op, we generate a certain level of profit, and a certain portion of that profit we return to the members based on how much members have purchased at the co-op. Now we will have certainly, we have had a patronage refund check for the last financial year, but I will make a quick caveat to say over the next potentially up to 6 years, we don't anticipate generating a patronage check. This is due to the fact that because of the investment in the South End, we won't return to profitability as the co-op until in 6 years' time. Now we hope certainly to get back to profitability sooner, and so this patronage check will not be coming, we anticipate, to members possibly during that period of time. But obviously as members, just to highlight some of the other benefits that members do have, including aside from the RO machine, but the member volunteer work, where if you volunteer 2 hours a month, you get a 7% discount. 4 hours a month, you get a 12% discount on your purchase at the co-op. And then certainly every year when we do circulate those patronage refund checks, a certain portion is not cashed. We do have members who contact the co-op and ask us to donate that to a worthy cause. We have other members who choose not to cash them, and with that we are entering our 4th co-op patronage seedling grant that will take place next Monday, where the mayor and also Secretary Tebbetts will be joining us to present the grantees, totaling approximately a little over $30,000 of what we consider to be the patronage seedling grants. But once again, another way for us to take that money and invest it back in the community. Also, as referenced earlier, in terms of the number of Vermont local products that we offer over 2,800, and as mentioned earlier, 40% of our sales is generated from local products. Certainly, importantly, I know to the city is our taxes and fees. I won't necessarily reference numbers, but they've been increasing every year, and certainly for the coming year with the South End expansion, that number is also going to be increasing further as well. Lastly, in terms of expansion updates, as all of you hopefully know and have possibly visited, granted I have a number of members who I've met at the downtown store, and they say, "John, we love your South End store." And I said, "Have you visited?" It said, "No, we haven't, but we found parking space in the downtown. We love it." That's a great compliment to hear, and I am always amazed at how much people have complimented our parking space in the South End. But needless to say, opening the South End store prior to Thanksgiving was quite a challenging task. certainly from the National Cooperative Grocers Association, who partnered with us in our expansion. They would never recommend to a co-op to open right before what we all know is the busiest, certainly food holiday of the year. And we did not necessarily choose that to begin with. We had some delays, but we definitely wanted to open for Thanksgiving. And I can tell you that the opening, once again, with great support from the community, certainly the hard work from our staff and great support from the city and certainly the mayor and all of you who are a part of it, certainly Ward 5, city councilors, we were able to open very smoothly. We planned it to be a soft opening on November the 16th, but word spread very quickly. It's amazing what digital technology can do. And I'm very happy to say that as much as I've been approached, and we've approached by members saying, wow, the downtown feels just as busy, maybe a little less busy, but still busy, but the South End just has a different atmosphere, a different vibe. Is everything okay? It just feels a little too less busy than the downtown. I'm happy to say that we are actually meeting and exceeding our sales forecasts in the South End. Now remember, we had anticipated the South End to be certainly a larger space and also to have possibly a different feel. One of the biggest challenges we did have opening the South End was finding enough staff to hire for that South End site. With the 100 positions we were looking to fill, we probably were only able to open at around 50, a little over 50% strength. That's a combination of low unemployment, which obviously is a very nice situation to have in many ways, but certainly makes it difficult when you're looking for very capable employees, and to some extent our pickiness. And I think all of you appreciate that we really do treasure the cultural fit in addition to the technical expertise that staff bring to the co-op. But in light of that, we were able to open that store very smoothly. We appreciated the patience from our members and customers because I know that we have set high expectations based on how we operate in the downtown. And here we are, over 3 months since we opened, and things are just getting even better. One of the things, though, we were slightly surprised at, that we had expected a migration of about 20% of the traffic and sales from the downtown to migrate to the South End over, let's say, a 3 to 4 month period of time. What has indeed happened is that that has migrated over almost instantly. Now, we could anticipate that during the holidays, because the South End was new, that there would be great interest in it. But we thought that might slightly settle in the early new year, and there would be more of a gradual climb. But the reality is that has not happened. It's really stayed at around 20%, which is, once again, a great situation to be in. The other is regarding the Old North End space. Now, many of you may know that really over about a year and a half ago, we secured a space in the Old North End at 242 North Winooski Avenue, with the intention that we wanted to experience opening the South End store and possibly then looking at expanding into the Old North End. Recognizing, though, in theory, what it would take to open a South End store, but the amount of time and effort, and even now, the settling and efforts required to really optimize the South End store in conjunction with the Old North End, we've made this very difficult decision that we will not be expanding into the Old North End at this time, and we will be exiting that lease. We really wanted to be very mindful, certainly fiscally, but also as we look at our staff's capacity, and as much as we have an incredible can-do attitude, we feel that there may be other services and ways that we can support not only Old North End, but the other parts of the community. So with that, I would just say stay tuned, because we certainly do look to expand in the future. It just may not necessarily be in the way that we have looked at before in a bricks and mortar style. So with that, really just wanting to share some of our progress. Thank you as always for your tremendous support, and I'm certainly open to questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Tashiro. We appreciate that. And is there any comments or questions from the City Council? Councilor Shannon.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. And thank you, John. I just want to commend you for the leadership you have brought to this process and the opening of the store. And I'm not sure that everybody is aware that we changed the zoning to allow the South End store to open, and the neighbors rightfully said that that zoning change brought in a use that attracted more cars than probably any other use we could think of. And coming to agreement with working with the immediate neighbors on the traffic issues was not easy. And I so appreciate the way that you approached that calmly and respectfully, and really worked with them, and at some significant expense, reworked your plans to accommodate them. But every step of the way, I just so admired how you handled yourself and how you spoke with the neighbors. And consequently, I don't know about Chip, but I will say I have not been hearing complaints in the neighborhood. And that's not to say, I'm sure there's an impact in the neighborhood and the neighbors understand that. But it's really thanks to the way that you worked with them, and the store has really been welcomed in the neighborhood. And certainly I'm there a fair amount and appreciate all of the services that are provided there, and look forward to your grand opening. Hard to believe you haven't had a grand opening at this point, but because it seems quite open. But thank you very much.
I just want to say, thank you so much to both Councilor Shannon and Councilor Mason. I do want to also draw attention. Allison is here with us today. She did a tremendous amount of work around the community engagement, so really want to give her tremendous credit. The city's support from the mayor, I know Chapin I saw earlier from DPW. I really think it was a concerted effort across all parties to really work together. There were challenges along the way, but I feel it was really in the spirit of the co-op, and I think in the spirit of how we want to work in partnership with the city and certainly with the neighborhood. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Moore?
Thank you, Acting President. So it seems clear that we're a community that asks a lot, right? There is so much that clearly the city market does, and I think this body kind of required that of you in a lot of ways, and I know it still comes up to you that it is still a more expensive place for a lot of folks to shop, myself included. I certainly shop there when I can, and I love the Thursday bulk days. Anyway, I am curious. Back in the day, maybe a decade or two ago, when I was in Brattleboro at their co-op, they would have this this store kind of next to the co-op, their former co-op, and it had like the seconds, in a sense, which seemed like a really great creative way to offer some products at a discounted price. I'm curious if there's any other kind of thoughts out there, because I mean, when you do expand, if it's into the Old North End or into Winooski, it would be great to offer something that would make it more affordable to some of the folks that live there. Thanks.
Thanks for that question. It's a question that does come up periodically, probably less so these days, but in terms of having that access to healthy foods, we recognize that there's a general perception out there about the co-op being more expensive, and yes, we do offer a variety of products. But we've really made quite an effort, and I think you've seen it once again with our Co-op Basics program, which is an everyday low price program. We have over 240 SKUs of products now that are available. We've also done for now quite a long time, many years in fact, price comparisons for a number of what we call basic basket items with all the traditional retailers, food retailers really in the area. And we have consistently come within anywhere from 6 to 10% and from a price standpoint. And in some cases, we actually offer better prices with some of our products. So from that standpoint, we're continuing to put efforts in that. And then certainly, I'm glad you're appreciating the Thursday 10% off bulk, actually 10% off bulk, all bulk items. And then Tuesdays is Take Care
Supplement
Tuesdays. 10% off all supplements as well. And we are looking at actually for Food for All members, because they get a 10% discount on their purchase in general, to possibly offer additional discounts, especially around produce and for bulk. So we do have efforts that we are making there, and that was based out of a survey that we conducted about a year and a half ago. That has led us to look at that type of work. So I think as we move forward, we certainly want to be accessible to all the people in the community, and certainly being extremely very mindful of that price perception that we have, because we recognize that we need to continue to work at that and get that message out there that we are open and accessible.
How's that? Thank you, Councilor Moore, Councilor Mason, and then Councilor Jang.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. I'll echo the appreciation, John and Allison, for both the presentation and your presence in the South End. John, could you briefly talk about the status of the sale of the second parcel in the South End, just sort of an update and where that stands?
Yes. So we did make a press release about this now probably about 3 to 4 weeks ago. So we went through a very rigorous and comprehensive RFP, a request for proposal process that started last April, May, and a number of organizations applied for that. We went and then essentially took them through a bit of a matrix, assessed them, received presentations, and went through a couple of rounds of presentations, and we ultimately landed on a purchase and sales agreement that we confirmed with Petrocliffs, really in January of this year. And once again, that's a purchase and sales agreement, so the sale has not been finalized. There's a due diligence period that they will conduct. That could be anywhere from 6 to potentially up to maybe 9 months. But it was really a very thorough process. We certainly had our board involved in that process as well. And we really looked at it on a number of fronts, fit with the community, how it complements certainly the mission of the co-op. Price was one of many components of it, and such. So we took a very comprehensive look, and that's where we landed. And we really feel they did a phenomenal job in terms of painting their vision, what they saw short-term and longer-term, and certainly as a local business that is well-respected in the community that promotes health and wellness, I think for us, we really felt that was a very nice fit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President Wright. Yes, thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for being here. And before I start, I mean, you did not include my program, the Burlington School District, but since 2014, there isn't any request we made in terms of donation that you haven't granted us. So we want to thank you very much for that, and also for employing so many new Americans, to learn from them and also to teach them, food safety and all of that. But my question is more about the characteristics you used in having the second store in the new Old North End instead of New North End. What were those elements? What were you looking for that the South End has, that the New North End don't have? Why the South End and instead of there? And also, I think it would be very important for you to consider a bike to shop program. So for example, if you bike with your helmet, you come in, you get a 5% discount, just to encourage people to keep on walking, to keep on biking, because we all connected and we all very close to each other. And in relation, it's also, we know that the South End and the downtown, they're very close. The two stores are very close when you compare to the New North End. So just wanted to.
Okay, right. Thank you for that question. As you can imagine, when we were looking at expansion, this has taken really quite a few years. This even was really much before my time joining the co-op. where we recognized that with the amount of sales and traffic that the downtown store was generating, that we viewed really needing to look at another location to be able to offset some of that traffic from the downtown. And this is a very rare situation to be in. It's very rare, certainly within the co-op world, but I think with food retailers in general, that you're looking to build another location to cannibalize essentially the sales of your existing store. But this was indeed the case for the downtown. So it's a very unique situation in many respects. And so when we looked at different locations and we conducted market studies that were done by experts, we were able to identify, after a number of different assessments, this South End location. And so, sure enough, we had developed a pro forma in terms of what and how much traffic would possibly migrate from the downtown to the South End. And that has indeed been the case. And we've also anticipated new traffic and sales coming to the South End as well. We have looked at other locations in past, including the Old North End, Winooski, and others, even places well beyond Burlington. And we'll continue to do that, but for the time being, really our utmost priority was really how to offset the traffic from the downtown, and the South End really was the right fit. And at the same time, a parcel of land did come up that we could actually be able to work with and ultimately purchase. And I'll certainly, to your second point, take into consideration, the thought about bicycle benefits. We do offer bicycle benefits to our staff in the same way that we offer free bus passes to our staff to commute to work with either location. And with the South End, we have developed 75 bicycle parking spaces, which I know exceeds, I think, the initial limit that the city had set out, as a way for us to demonstrate how we also want to be indeed sustainable. And on that note, two very final comments, if there weren't any. One is, I don't know if all of you are aware, but we rarely talk about the sustainable efforts that we make at the co-op. But case in point, for the South End, in addition to the fact that it took us about 3 times as much financially to clean up the parcel of land. It was a very toxic site, and because of that, we could have done the bare minimum, but as the co-op, you can imagine that we really wanted to do it in the right way. So hand on heart, there is no cleaner site, really, than the South End. And by the same token, because of that, we did receive the Governor's Environmental Award last year. Once again, we appreciate that, but the point was that we really wanted to make sure that it was a safe environment for the community for many years to come. And then the second thing is just to say that Councilor Shannon talked about the grand opening. We did have a ribbon cutting, certainly at the end of last year, which the mayor so kindly was part of. We are planning a grand opening on May the 12th. So please do mark that in your calendars. We'd very much like to see all of you there. Once again, it's a celebration for the community. And we hope to make it a really fun, big, essentially block party in partnership with the likes of Citizen Cider and such. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Acting President Wright. John, I just wanted to say thank you for being here to make this annual report and echo the appreciation of my colleagues for what a great partner the co-op is in so many ways. This project had the added challenge of having to be designed not just to work with the existing infrastructure and streets that are there now, but also with the anticipated, relatively near-term arrival of the Champlain Parkway. That added extra challenges here, and was also, I think, exciting that long plan change is getting to the point where it's real and something we're working through together. Your sustainability efforts are also very much appreciated. You didn't even really get into some of the features of the new store that are so unique and exceptional in terms of bringing down the climate impact of the new store, and I think very much models what the city is striving to achieve in its net zero energy city goals. And then another thing, just think that came out in this report that is always striking about the way the co-op operates is the focus on metrics and being really working hard to measure the public value, the community value that's being created by the organization, and it's always just, for the first time, Clem Nyland years ago kind of walked me through that too today. I really appreciated that aspect of the co-op's culture. It does raise one question that I was hoping you can answer quickly. I was just a little surprised to see, and hadn't somehow internalized from your past presentations, that the 3 Squares Vermont and WIC redemption numbers have fallen quite significantly from at least the recent peak in 2013, almost 30% down below that. And I'm just wondering why you think that is.
So that's a great question, and thank you for that. From our standpoint, part of it is relative. With federal grants really drying up, I think we're very much at a peak back in 2013. But as the grants have slowly diminished, we have struggled to sort of keep pace. Not because that we haven't put in efforts in, but because our impact at that point was so strong. And that's why that we have moved to introducing other programs to try to bring that contribution back up to similar levels, and we'll continue to do that. But that's really one of the key reasons that we have seen, because from a service standpoint, whether it be the Co-op Basics program, whether it's introducing these additional discount days that we offer, and certainly planned efforts to offer additional discounts in addition to the ongoing 10% discount that Food for All members receive. We would just like to continue to monitor that. And we've certainly seen an increase in the number of Food for All members overall, which is, once again, a good sign for us, and that we're headed in the right direction. And I also did want to also thank the mayor for reminding me, because there are, I could go on for quite a while about some of the different aspects of the South End store. We do have the first ever transcritical CO2 refrigeration system in Vermont. This means that essentially the refrigeration unit is powered by CO2. The technology is proven. It's in places of Europe and in other states, but never in Vermont. We made the investment at the very onset because we wanted to set a precedence for other food retailers to follow. And so we hope that is the case. We also have a wonderful teaching kitchen. So if you haven't taken a class at the Co-op, we offer over 70 a year. They've been selling out very quickly. And then also we have a community space, something that, based on the conversations, the many conversations that we had with the community, that came up as a consistent want for the community, and so we developed one which you can preserve for use. So once again, just some different aspects of the South End, which we hope you will enjoy in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Tashiro, for that presentation. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the bags you gave us all.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good night.
With that, concludes that presentation on item number 3. We will move in. We're about 20 minutes late on the public forum. My apologies. So we will get right into item number 4, public comment period. And I'll call your name up, and you have 3 minutes to speak. There is a time system there in front of you that alerts you when you're near the end. The yellow light, the red light tells you your time is up and you need to conclude your remarks. Please make sure you speak right into the microphone so everyone can hear you. And the council was criticized recently in the Free Press and an editorial by someone that it didn't appear we were listening. So let me remind everyone on the council to just make sure that we are listening to the public, and we appreciate hearing any comments you have for us tonight, and just ask that it's done respectfully. So we'll start out with Eileen Andriel is our first speaker, to be followed by Doug Lazaris. Good evening, Ms. Andriel. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd first like to acknowledge the results of last Tuesday's town meeting, where 55% of the voters in Burlington voted with their heads and their hearts and supported Article 6. I hope the City Council will do its due diligence to uphold the mandate from the people of Burlington, who asked for the cancellation of the F-35 mission and requested a quieter, safer mission for our Air National Guard that does not harm its neighbors or their children. I understand that you were to receive a presentation tonight honoring the new Navy fast transport ship named for the city of Burlington. Please note that this new ship that honors Burlington is designed for amphibious landings and troop transports or to perform humanitarian missions. These are the same kinds of missions that the voters of Burlington strongly support for our Air National Guard and that aligns more closely with our Vermont values than the F-35 First Strike stealth bomber fighter jet, whose primary mission will be to bomb structures and people of sovereign nations in foreign lands. I hope you will fulfill the wishes of the voters of Burlington for a mission that our Vermont Air National Guard, that they can truly support and that restores their support for our Guard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doug Lazarus. Thank you. To be followed by Charlotte Dennett. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My coming here tonight has to do with my interest in...
Pull the microphone in, please, a little closer.
Closer to me?
Yes.
Is this good?
Yes.
Okay. My coming here tonight reflects my interest in the possible different futures that lay waiting for the mural on Church Street. I'm an artist, a filmmaker, and a bit of a historian. I did the bicentennial publication for the state of Vermont back in '91. I've been aware of the mural for years. I never thought of the mural as representing Vermont history. I thought it was kind of a Church Street phenomena. I think that what's been sort of brought out now is that it does seem to have morphed in consciousness to a representation of the state's history and not just Church Street's history or even Burlington's history. My personal problems with the mural have to do with the historicity of the mural. It does not actually include things that are, and people that are significant to the history of the state. It also does not present the contributions of non-white Vermonters to any great degree. I did some preliminary research, found that the first Vermont woman, the first black woman poet in America was a Vermonter back in the 1790s. She was born in the 1790s. And so people began coming to me out of my research, and I realized that the mural did not have to deal with tokenism, but actual important historical figures, if it is to represent Vermont. I am not in favor of the idea of taking the mural down in its entirety and replacing it. It'd be very expensive to do that, and I believe it also would be provocative to people who feel that doing that would be a statement that goes beyond the mural to the issue of political correctness, which to certain individuals, even in Vermont, is threatening to them. I think that what I would like to see is that the mural be viewed as a work in progress, that our consciousness has evolved since it went into position, and that by the addition of probably a dozen or so figures, the mural could be altered so that it would be making a, whoops, I guess that's it.
You can finish your
Okay,
sentence.
it would be altered so that its statement would be inclusive of both historical material and a balance of the contribution of non-white Vermonters.
Thank you very much. Charlotte Dennett, to be followed by Donna Walters. Good evening, Ms. Dennett. Welcome.
This time I come as someone who had the great privilege of studying art history in Florence, Italy, the great city of the Renaissance. So when I first heard about a call to destroy the mural, I was shocked. And it hit me right in the gut as someone who appreciates art as history, and as a reflection of the times when people lived and created. It is a window into a civilization at that particular period. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. I decided to look up in some of my old art books some parades. And I have here a painting, Sumerian art dating back to 2290 BC. I think I'll just show it to you real briefly. It shows the king on the top sitting in the throne having wine, and then there's a tribute procession.
Do you want to pass that around? Only because when you leave the microphone, channel 17 loses you in terms of the volume. Thank you.
What does this tell us about the time that this was created? It shows that there were slaves, and they were bringing tribute. And the interesting thing is there's a picture in there that shows that one of the porters is scowling. Did the artist think he or she could get away with putting that into the mural? I don't know. But it tells us something about the times. Then we come to the time of the Medici in Florence. And there's this wonderful portrait called, my voice is loud enough, it's called The Adoration of the Magi.
But the problem is, Ms. Dennett, is it's loud enough for us, but we have viewers on channel 17 that lose you, and they can't hear. Well, it's important that, so. Yeah, we need that for channel 17 especially. They'll pick up, if you hold that up, they'll zero in on it too.
All right. This was done in the 15th century. It was in Florence. And what's new about this is you no longer have kings. You have well, they're not even noblemen, they're bankers. This is the beginning of capitalism. It starts in Florence. And there's a great artistic blossoming at the time. But what's interesting is that you're seeing a melding of a religious theme, the adoration of the Magi, and you've got the nobles presented, visiting the Virgin Mary. So they're interjecting. The point is, this tells us a lot about the times, and the Medici are pictured in just as people are pictured in the mural. Now come up to present. It's much more representative, but it needs to be improved. I concur with the previous speaker. One other last thing. I found an article called Talk About Don't Hide Public Art. And in this case, there was a furor in Elgin, Illinois about a mural that people liked, just showed white people in a town, and then they found out it was taken from a picture of a lynching. So it changed the whole dimension. And what ultimately, here's the end, what ultimately got decided was that a committee was formed, Elgin Cultural Arts Commission, which will decide the fate of the mural. And they say the purpose is to engage the community in an ongoing conversation about the history of racial violence. So that's what we should do.
Thank you, Ms. Dennett. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. Donna Walters is up next, to be followed by Monique Fordham. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. I represent Keep the Park Green, and we are the people that taped all the trees in the park. So I encourage people, if you haven't had a chance to take a walk or drive by the park in the last 3 weeks, to please do so. It's not an Easter egg hunt. Every tree that is wrapped in brightly colored tape is one of the trees that will be cut down if the plan for City Hall that's under review right now, City Hall Park, is approved. So I just want you to imagine what it's going to feel like walking through there, and those are all stumps. And I want to appeal to the City Council to you voted on this to approve this back in September, and I'd like to encourage you to take another look at it, because the plan has changed and morphed since then. There's new information that's been brought forward that's can be informative, and I think you should take a look at it. One of the things in particular is a shade study that the RB requested, and it pretty much shows that on the hardscape area where people would be sitting on benches, on stone walls, or movable tables and chairs, there's hardly any shade at all. There's a tiny bit of shade, but hardly any shade at all between noon and 4 p.m. Pretty much the peak times when people want to be escaping the hot hardscape on Church Street, and they want to escape into the shade of the park and eat their lunch. We also visited Decker Towers and 3 Cathedral Square to talk to senior citizens that live there within walking distance of the park. We showed them this shade study and asked them what they thought about it. And pretty much what they had to say was they want to sit on wooden benches that have back support, that are along the walkways, not on the grass, but along the walkways in the shade. So I would just encourage you to take another look at what is slated to be approved. And the other thing that you didn't know when you folks made your approval decision was a definitive number of how many trees would actually be cut down. And we know that number now. And people are shocked. They're just shocked. And you may be shocked too. So please take a walk through the park and see how you feel.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Walters. Next up, Monique Fordham, to be followed by Carolyn Bates. Welcome, Ms. Fordham.
Thank you. Will you let me eat into my time for just a second to say I came a little bit late, and then when I saw that you all had little goodie bags, I thought maybe like Oprah, I would look under my bag and under my seat, and there would be one, but there wasn't one. But anyway, I had my hopes up there for a second. Thank you, Council. Thank you for hearing us today. I'm Monique Fordham from Keep the Park Green. As you probably know, we've been working for the last month from the time that we first received the actual tree study of how many trees were scheduled to be cut down. We've been working to raise public awareness about this because we know that there would be an outcry. And we were right. And in a very small amount of time, the DRB, which was reviewing it, received over 180 emails from concerned people, in addition to at least 50 people coming to speak on very short notice and at a time which is usually extremely inconvenient for people to attend because it starts at 5 when most people are just getting out of work and going home to make dinner. So I think that in this very short amount of time, and once we had put the ribbons on the trees to really show the full effect of the plan, people, I'm sure some of your constituents have reached out to you and were really, really upset about this and did not feel that there was adequate consensus. Members of Keep the Park Green attended 19 of the public planning meetings, and we were never given a straight answer about how many trees were going to be cut. We were never given that personally. We actually just found the plan by looking on the DRB website under a button that said coming soon, which in most cases would indicate there was nothing there. That is how we obtained their tree study. And in our interactions with the DRB, it became clear that what I would call there was impermissible segmentation of the trees in the park, and that 22 were not studied. So the total amount that people were told was going to remain 24 did not factor in the opinions that the previous arborists had already said 7 of these non-assessed trees would also need to come down. That's a total of 39 trees to come down. And in addition to that, we've just requested the staging maps for when they bring in heavy machinery. And one of the members of the design team in one of the second DRB meeting had made a comment that some other trees would need to come down to accommodate the staging areas, which would mean even more trees would come down. So although it's clear that the DRB is going to approve this based on their very narrow criteria, we're going to continue to raise public awareness about this because we don't think that your constituents are going to be happy with this plan. And as Ms. Walters stated, we don't believe that when you voted on the plan that you had all the information in front of you that your constituents may care about. So I think that we can find a compromise. We're certainly not against taking down sick trees that cannot be treated and mitigated in some way, but we think that we can work together for a better plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fordham. Carolyn Bates, up next, to be followed by Wayne Senville. Welcome, Ms. Bates.
some of those for everyone, and I think I have all of these for half.
We need you on the mic. We'll pass it around, but we need you on the mic. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much. I'm Carolyn Bates. I've been a resident here since 1973, and I started working here in 1971. So I was in City Hall Park before they took out all the benches, and the homeless and I slept on those benches. I was even homeless for about a year. But anyway, we're in the City Hall Park design. I'm part of Keep the Park Green, and I find that we just all voted to help climate change, to reduce it in this city. And I'm pretty sure the mayor is very proud to have that within our city. But we want to take out more than half of the trees in City Hall Park. I mean, I have now taken out all the grass in my little 1/18 of an acre land to try to help climate change. I think we should in the city as well. Do you know trees help reduce air pollution? They reduce UV light because you're in the shade, and the biggest operation in the nation every year is for cataracts, and UV light causes those, and cancer. It also cools the park all day, and then at night, the cooling air goes into the surrounding neighborhood. The trees sequester carbon, and we don't want any more carbon in our CO2 in our air, do we? I think it's very important that each and every one of you walk that park more than once and see what's happening, how many trees are really being taken down, and think of the size of their canopy. I can't even put my arms around some of those trees, and they're going to replace them with trees that are the size of my ankle. Okay? I measured it. What I have here, I've done a lot of taking their designs and trying to make them understandable because they're only in black and white illustration. So you have to read between the lines to find out what's going on. And this particular one, I don't have enough for all of you right now, but that is showing you the hardscape at 4 o'clock in June, which is, and on the top one, you will see that there's very little hardscape showing. Also, the hardscape's only 25% of the park, not a third of the park, which is the bottom plan, and that's their plan. And you can see it's hot on the 4 p.m. This other one I'm showing you shows you the trees that initially we figured were going to be removed. We found more. And also on the bottom is the 2012 survey that everyone keeps talking about being robust. And you'll notice that only 5 people wanted less shade in that park. So I don't think that's being followed at all. So I ask you, I plead with you to let this be wide open, let the public come back like they did last August, and have a public display of what the new design is. It was changed March 7th of this year. Come on, get the public out and revote. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Wayne Senville, to be followed by James Lees. Good evening and welcome, Mr. Senville.
Mayor Weinberger and members of the council, even though it's not on your agenda tonight, I also am here to speak about the proposed City Hall Park plans. It's recently gone through 2 DRB hearings. As some of you may know, I had the honor and privilege of serving on the Planning Commission for some 11 years and on the DRB for 2 years. In all the time that I was on those 2 bodies, on any other project, I haven't seen as many people come out opposed to a plan. And that there were more people at the DRB hearings than were at for example, the downtown mall redevelopment project. People were passionate, and they made really perceptive comments, especially about the massive tree removal. I mean, it goes without saying that City Hall Park is probably the most important public space at least in downtown, probably in the city. And the main issue that's coming up is just the dramatic extent to which trees are going to be removed, many to meet the program needs of the new park plan. The plans call for removing over 60% of the trees now there in one fell swoop. It's going to be almost like a clear cutting of the park. of our Central Park. Also, for me, I also have concerns about the removal of the historic fountain feature. They're replacing it by a series of water jets. I haven't heard any comments by the planners about what's going to happen during the 6, 7, 8 months of the year when the water jets are not in operation. It's on this massive paved surface. I just don't understand it. I've had to do some fundraising recently for a nonprofit, and you have to give people the ask. So the ask I want to give to you is come up with a way to re-examine this, to reopen the process. I think there's room for compromise on both sides, but I think both sides need to get involved. There's new information that's come up, as the previous speakers have said, and I think what we're asking for is for you to develop some strategy to have a fresh look at what's in place before we go down this route. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Senville. James Lees, to be followed by Steve Marshall, our final speaker. Mr. Lees, welcome.
Thank you very much. So the vote for ballot item 6 on March 6th was not just a victory for thousands of families in the flight path. It was also actually a victory for the men and women of the Vermont National Guard. More than 1,000 children will be spared the intense noise of the F-35 that Burlington's own Board of Health reported causes delayed reading and impaired memory and concentration. Elderly will be spared a cause of heart disease and stroke, as also identified by Burlington's own Board of Health. And the men and women of the Vermont Air National Guard will have a new mission that does not put them in the position of harming neighboring children and elderly, and that allows them to avoid contradicting their own announced mission to protect the citizens of Vermont. It will also be a victory for Vermont's storied town meeting form of democracy that goes all the way back to 1777. If this council respects the will of the electorate by requesting that the Air Force cancel the F-35 at Burlington and provide alternative equipment for the Vermont Air National Guard that's low noise and has a high safety record. I'm delighted that Councilor Joan Shannon put forward such a resolution. Her resolution is consistent with the requirements of Article 6 and Article 20 of the Vermont Constitution that provide the town meeting is when the people instruct their representatives, and that elected officials are trustees and servants of the people. I hope the resolution will remain as written and will receive broad support from councilors and the mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Our final speaker tonight is Steve Marshall. Welcome, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. And thank you, Council. Thank you very much for considering the resolutions and ordinance changes which will have an impact on not just the homeless community, but also on a lot of other poor people and tourists. I take it you're, I guess I'm told that you to anticipate that you will be passing these resolutions and ordinance changes, which I fully support, and I'm very, very grateful. I'm going to take the rest of my time, or part of it, to change the subject. I would like to say about the F-35. The world is a crazy and mean place. We are seeing shootings in schools. I do believe we are not talking about arming teachers here in Vermont, because we do not believe that making schools less safe, we don't want to make them war zones. And in this very same way, I am adamantly opposed to bringing the F-35 to Burlington and to Vermont because I do not want to make the world less safe by supporting the existence of these planes. I would ask you to demand a safe mission, a mission that contributes to the safety of the world and is not one that is based in a loud, dangerous machine. Finally, the thought was, I guess I'm going to have to leave it there because I went blank. Thank you very much.
Happens to us all, Mr. Marshall. Thank you very much. That concludes tonight's public forum. That's item number 4. We will move on to item number 5, the consent agenda for tonight. And I will recognize Councilor Roof.
Yes, I'll move to amend and adopt the consent agenda, taking the actions as indicated.
Seconded by Councilor Busher. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving and taking the actions indicated by the consent agenda tonight, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously, and we have approved tonight's slate of consent agenda items. We will now recess the regular city council meeting and go to the Board of Civil Authority with the mayor presiding. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Acting President Wright. Let me call into session the Board of Civil Authority at 8:20 p.m. The first item is the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I'll accept a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Busher, seconded by Councilor Mason. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda and take the action indicated?
So moved.
Thank you, Acting President Wright, seconded by Councilor Busher. Discussion. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And the Board of Civil Authority without objection is adjourned at
Thank you, Mr.
8:21.
Mayor. And we will now convene the Local Control Commission meeting. Item number 1 is the agenda, and I will go to the chair of the Local Control Commission, Councilor Dean.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. I'd like to move the adoption of the agenda.
Moved by Councilor Dean, seconded by Councilor Jang. Any discussion? All in favor of approving that agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have the agenda. Councilor Dean.
So now we move to our consent agenda. I'd like to move the adoption of the consent agenda, taking the actions as indicated.
Seconded by Councilor Roof. All those in favor? Any discussion? All those in favor of approving that consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? We have our consent agenda.
Okay.
Approved.
Move to item 3.01. I'd like to move the approval of the 2017-2018 first-class restaurant bar liquor license application for Need Bakery, 295 North Winooski Avenue, 112C, with all standard conditions.
Moved by Councilor Dean, seconded by Councilor Roof. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Move to item 3.02, Councilor Dean.
I'd like to move the approval of the 2017-2018 outside consumption permit application for the Friendly Toast, 86 St. Paul Street.
Moved and now seconded by Commissioner Roof. Any discussion? Commissioner Busher.
It's my regular question. So, was there any process? I'm not sure if there are any residential units around there, but was there a process to leaflet or include comments from the neighborhood or surrounding businesses regarding the 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. outside permit. And could you just share it? Sorry, President Wright, may I ask if the chair of the committee could share any comments that were made?
I will recognize the chair, to Commissioner Dean, to respond.
There was not a process to leaflet or ask adjacent neighbors to this location. It is in a very commercial location just across. There are very few residential units that would be directly adjacent to this this new outside area. So we felt as though it's a responsible operator, someone who has multiple restaurants in other states as well. He has experience doing this, and that it's a relatively small area that has in the past hosted, with previous restaurants located in that location, has hosted outside area consumption before. We felt as though it was responsible to support the application.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make clear that I didn't expect the committee to leaflet. I expect the applicant. So just so you understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bush. Commissioner Hartnett.
How many, can I address the chair as well?
You can ask a question
Yeah,
and have him respond. Yes.
Thanks, Councilor. All right. Appreciate that. How many seats are we talking?
As I'm looking at the application here, I believe there are, well, they're in the region of 20 seats.
20 seats?
Yeah, 19 to 20 seats. 3, 6, 1, 2, 29. 29.
Okay. All right.
That's fine.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartnett. Commissioner Mason.
May I also ask permission to ask a brief question of the chair?
You may proceed.
Sort of following on the same line, I feel like these guys all come in and ask for the most. I appreciate Friday, Saturday nights, 2 a.m., might be expected living in downtown, but I do share some concern that the 2 o'clock, 7 days a week, there are a number of, there are 4 condos at 76 St. Paul Street. There are a number of, apartments along Bank. I could see if it were really intending to do 7 nights a week. And my guess is they're not, but most applicants come in and ask for the most, rather than what they actually project in terms of hours. So I don't know if there was any discussion with the applicant about whether they really needed, 2 a.m., 7 days a week.
We encourage the applicants to think broadly about what their needs will be. And so we did not have an objection during our discussions as to what they had proposed. It's consistent with many of the other businesses that are in that area. I would ask one of my co-committee members, commission members, whether he recalls anything that was if that's possible, could we recognize him?
We'll cede the floor to Councilor Roof. Commissioner Roof.
On this, I believe actually they came in and they asked for very little. And as has become common practice in committee, we invite them to, like Chair Dean said, to think a little bit more broadly, especially when there are nearby adjacent businesses that are doing the same type of operations, such as in this case, Vermont Pub and Brewery, or across further down St. Paul, that strip there with American Flatbread. With this one, again, responsible tenant. Prior applicants had more expansive times than what they were offering. I think it was Bluebird Deli at one point. And so at that point, we felt as though these times were open. The last thing I'll say is, as also has been common practice, unless there is a reason to be restrictive, we tend to be granting in the outset. And then if problems arise, we latch down.
Is that Councilor Mason? Commissioner Mason?
Yeah, I have a philosophical difference with that, but that's not relevant to this application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shannon.
I will also voice that I have a philosophical difference with that. I think that we should be asking applicants to be realistic, not expand their horizons to, the most that they could possibly do. And I think that it perhaps can invite problems where there don't need to be problems. So I would ask the committee to reconsider that general philosophy, but we'll go forward with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shannon. Anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Chairman?
I'll just say that I appreciate the input from both councilors, Shannon and Mason, and I would like to invite them to contact me to give me a little more guidance about what they feel the appropriate questions to be asked and policies that we should be implementing.
Great, great. With that, I think, are ready for a vote. All those in favor of this item, 3.02, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Commissioner Hartnett is a no vote. So it is unanimous -1, and that's, I think we have, how many councilors do we have today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like it's a 9-1 vote in favor. Okay, so I think that completes the agenda, or is there?
So, okay, make a motion to adjourn.
Motion moved to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Roof. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That meeting is adjourned, and we will now convene one more meeting, which is the meeting of the full Board of Tax Abatement Committee. And I will recognize the chair of the committee, Councilor Mason, for item number 1, the agenda.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as follows. Note corrected decision letters for agenda items 3.01 and 3.02 per City Assessor's Office.
Amended agenda has been presented. Any second by that for that? Seconded by Councilor Roof. Any discussion? All those in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If I could hear that again, I only heard about 2 ayes. All those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Councilor Mason.
Next is the consent agenda. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented, taking the
Point of
action.
order.
Point of order, Councilor Shannon.
Doesn't the mayor run this meeting?
Good point, Councilor Shannon. Turn it over to Mr. Mayor. Yes, the mayor does run the Board of Tax Abatement meeting. You should have broke in, Mr. Mayor.
I'm happy to be here now, Acting President Wright. So, and I appreciate we have the agenda adopted, right?
Fortunately, all we've done is taken one little action, so it's all yours
So
now.
the next item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda and take the action indicated?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion of the consent agenda? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and that brings us to the deliberative agenda and item 3.01, which is a request for abatement of taxes for 27 Ivy Lane, the Crane Kaplan Revocable Trust. Are we ready for a motion on this item?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to deny the request and ask for the floor back if there's a second to explain why.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Busher, and it's back to you, Councilor Mason.
Thank you. This is a request for an abatement of $69.78. The facts in this are that the homeowner basically paid off his mortgage. Taxes and insurance were being escrowed. As such, they were not escrowed, so he basically was late in paying his taxes. As a matter of policy, before this board, we have taken the position that, absent some error by the city, pretty much everyone comes in with a reason why they didn't pay. But we have taken a pretty firm position in the past that absent some error by the city or one of the other statutory reasons, the simple fact that you didn't pay was not a basis to abate. At the time this was heard before the subcommittee, it was just, there were 2 of us, Councilor Jang and myself, and we were unable to reach an agreement on this one. Thank you.
The floor is open for discussion. Councilor Jang.
Yes, so I would like for us to grant this request of tax abatement, knowing that this is not a lot of money, $69, and it took a lot of time going back for this individual who never missed a payment. And like Councilor Mason just stated, this was an error, and the error was not in our part. It was in the part of the city, if I get this right. Right? And for those reasons, and for an individual who paid his mortgage, who's been doing extremely very well in responding to paying his taxes on time, and for this amount of just taxes that does not have any, it's not major, it's very minimal. And just the time that he took to come here, to go back, to also, most importantly, was the only person on that day who showed up and stayed, waited for at least 2 hours for just $69. So I believe that it is very important for us sometime to take things based on the stories, based also on, the history of that individual. And this small request, I feel like it is important for us to grant the $69 tax abatement for this individual. Thank you.
Councilor Busher.
So I just want to speak in support of the motion to deny. I think that, every taxpayer has a reason that makes sense. I'm not saying that it's unfortunate what happened to this individual, but I think that it's not the dollar amount, because it's not whether this is a lot of money or a little money. It's about the process that we uphold in the city and how we consistently apply this to everybody. And I do believe that we have criteria, and this didn't rise to that level. It was not an error that the city made. It was unfortunate what happened. And so I feel for the individual. My taxes were late once because I was at a city council meeting and forgot to turn in my check. And it's lasted till after midnight, and there you go. That was human error. So things happen, but I believe that I have to be fair to everyone that in the past came forward with a story that had reason and rationale, but still we applied those same criteria. And I want people in the future to know that we will be consistent, that we won't just say, well, in this case, we feel for you and we are going to grant that. I just don't think that's okay. That is not consistent, and nor is it fair. And I need to be fair to all taxpayers. Thank you.
Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. I just wanted to sympathize with Councilor Jang's position and share that when I first came onto the council, I was appointed to the Tax Abatement Committee with Councilor Russ Ellis. And Councilor Ellis and I both shared Councilor Jang's sympathy for the taxpayers in these type of situations. And we went through our whole agenda. I forget who the third person was. It might have been Councilor Hurley at that time. And it was 2-1 on every decision, and we granted all of these tax abatements, and we came back to this board granting all the abatements, and the rest of the council then, knowing the history that Councilor Busher just described, overturned each and every one of our decisions, and there was virtually no consent agenda because the two of us did not agree with the full board. We were then removed from the Tax Abatement Committee because obviously the committee could not function and deliver the answers that the majority of the full body wanted. And yes, so both of us could not serve. And over the years, I have come to terms with the fact that it simply is fair to all the taxpayers to take the hard line that we have taken. And I actually went through and researched if a taxpayer had ever had a late payment on the whole list. I was very energetic at the time. But I do think that it's fair, and we need to be consistent in order to be fair, not to just one taxpayer, but to all of the taxpayers, and I will support the motion.
Okay, further discussion, Councilor Mason.
I'm sorry, I want to skip. I'm not sure whether the homeowner is here, and I want to extend that opportunity. Yes, please. I thought I recognized you. Please, come up, Mr. Gray. My apologies for not doing that first.
Thank you.
So, sir, I would just ask you to identify yourself for the record.
Michael Crane. I'm at 21 Ivy Lane, not 27. And I brought my daughter here from taking some time out from her high school homework to learn about her local city government. You know, I paid my taxes every payment consistently for 19 years. And I ended up missing a payment because the escrow stopped because I paid off my mortgage. And then I needed to get the mortgage, get the escrow payment out of escrow to make the payment. By the time I did that, I missed one payment, and I put it back into automatic payment, so it'll never happen again. So I understand that you have a policy, but if you're going to deny me based on an administrative rule, then why did you have me here? And why did you have a hearing? Let me explain the process. The payment was missed almost 2 years ago. I've been going back and forth with emails with the department since August 2017. They've made me fill out a form, which was the wrong one, made me fill out a second form, which I needed to collect 3 years of tax payments, which you already have. So I had to get it from them, from the department, make a photocopy, get my tax bill from you, make a photocopy, and get my assessor records from the people I'm appealing from, which you already have, make a photocopy, fill out a form, send it back. And then I sit before a board, at which point I finally discover that you don't have the authority to make the decision. And the only time I get to actually be heard is now, which is a bit overkill. You know, I thought the hearing was overkill. I sat before 4 paid staff employees and 2 elected officials. I would think that penalties that I'm trying to appeal here, I'm not abating my taxes. I'm abating the penalty. The penalty, what is a penalty? It's imposed to prevent abuse of a system. I didn't abuse the system. I never missed a payment. And is this the city government that I work for? So harsh that you no matter what, there is no discretion? Isn't that what a hearing is all about? To apply discretion? If you go over the speed limit and you've never had a prior, don't you get off? Don't you get to appear before a judge, and doesn't the judge get to say, hey, sorry, you went over the speed limit 5 miles an hour, too bad? No. My parking permit, the city of Burlington, you know, I paid the thing on the little silly little app you got. It didn't work. I showed them that it worked, that I actually made the payment through an email. It was all taken care of. My penalty got abated. These examples of being abated, I mean, this is a penalty that we're talking about, not a tax assessment. I'm protesting your enforcement process. This has been going on for over a year. This is ridiculous. And now I have to appear before you all. I mean, if you were never going to allow me to appear, I mean, or never going to affirm this because of an administrative rule, then this never needed to happen. I mean, this is a city government. I mean, I sat on city boards. I paid my taxes. I volunteered on the same boards that you sit on the Electric Commission, on the CDBG Commission, on the Ward 4 Planning Commission. My family goes out and tries to raise money for local nonprofits. We are citizens here. And you're going to look at me and say, too damn bad? You paid 19 years of payments, but you missed one and then corrected it so you can always be automatically paid? Too damn bad? Really? This is the city government that I work for? Is it really? This is the city government that I pay taxes to? That's how you're going to be? And then the same city government's going to turn around and ask me to do things. Sit on a board. Pay to contribute towards the city arts department. Go to cleanup day, green up day. Clean up my park. And that's how you're going to treat me? I would ask you to reconsider. This is a penalty, not an assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Councilor Shannon.
I hear Mr. Crane's points, and I wanted to check how the process works when he referenced the forms that he has to fill out in order to appeal these taxes. And on those forms, does it give the reasons? It's not actually an administrative policy, it's state law, the reasons that we can abate taxes. And is that in the forms that he fills out, is that on the form?
Yeah, the forms, towards the bottom of the form, state the three criteria that is outlined for them. One pause that I have about this is
I'm having trouble hearing you, Mr. Vickery.
I'm sorry. Okay, you can hear me better now. The form does lay out the three criteria: manifestly unjust, uncollectible, or illegal. And there is other information on the website. But one of the things that I have thought about listening to this gentleman is that maybe everyone that makes a request should have some type of manual as to what past practice has been. So they don't go through all the process if they know that they'll weigh their case and they'll have more information. And maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate that Mr. Crane's view is that our board is harsh, but it has been a long-standing policy of the board to try and be consistent, which is, I think, what is being interpreted as harsh, though we do value consistency. And what is quite unfortunate is the amount of time and effort that you have put into this process with the belief that you're coming to us with a reasonable request and that we have the flexibility to grant that. So I think that I would appreciate a second look at that process in light of the comments. I'm sorry that it hasn't changed my opinion of the appropriate way for myself to vote, and I hope for the rest of the board to be consistent with past practice. Thank you.
Councilor Hartnett.
Thank you. As I'm following this a little bit, so is there any recent history of any of the, maybe like the same occurrence with escrow and paying off a mortgage? I mean, this has got to happen before in the past, hasn't it? In a sense, we've had this. It sounds like it might have on a regular, not on a regular basis, but certainly it's had to happen before in the past. Any remembrance of any other cases, or?
No, but I can certainly look at the history. I know that we wrote a manual with cases that are related to late payments and how the previous boards have ruled. We can look at that as well. Regarding the escrow ending and the payoff, and then no, but they're all very similar, but they're all slightly different.
I can appreciate it. I've sat on the abatement board a few years, and I think one of the most important thing is to be consistent, and consistent can be harsh. I get that, and I too learned, I think, some valuable lessons when I sat on that board. and have a tremendous amount of respect for both counselors that serve on the board, but really see it as, I think it's more important that we do stay consistent, and I think that's hard to do, but I think it's the fair thing to do. So I'm going to agree with the assessment of the late penalty.
Councilor Jang.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Crane, I just wanted to also, remind you that, usually it doesn't come this way. You know, we take care of it at the tax abatement, and we take care of it there, and we move on. I mean, this is just specific because the third member of that board wasn't there. So there were one that said yes, one that said no, reason why we invited you here. And what I want to say again is thank you for bringing your family, your child, and also for all the commitment to the city that you have been doing, basically paying your taxes and volunteering to commissions and all of that. And I think that is really important to keep on doing it, but do not just let this, remind you that we all trying to do our best. And disagreements are welcome, but what I value the most is your commitment to the city and the great things you've been doing since then. Thank you.
Councilor Hartnett, and are there any other councilors who wish to be in the queue? Councilor Hartnett.
I just want to chime in on the process a little bit. And I understand, I think Councilor Dang is saying is that usually you have a decision made at that process, by three councilors. But that doesn't take your way right of coming in front of the full council. And that's where you are correct, Mr. Crane. The final decision is made at this council. And so you have a clearer outcome or a clearer picture when you have three city councilors on that committee, I think would be fair to say. But I do think that you have it right with your assessment when you say that I never realized that the final decision is made really by this entire body and not by that committee. So I just want to make sure that you understand that your process of thinking was right tonight. And it's only a recommendation that we receive from that committee. So I just want to, for the record, want you to realize that you were right in what you were saying tonight.
Okay. If there are no other councilors who wish to be recognized, I think we are ready for a vote. The motion is a motion to deny the request for abatement of taxes. And so, just a reminder, that's the motion. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We're a little bit distracted here. Could you please repeat, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Councilor Jang, we are voting on the motion made by Councilor Mason at the beginning of this item. It's a motion to deny the request for the abatement of taxes. Is the way it appears on the agenda. So the motion has been made. Would you like? I've not heard any dissenting votes. Are you voting aye or nay on this item?
Nay.
Okay. So I believe we have one nay vote and the rest are ayes. Thank you for coming out, Mr. Green, and making your case. And I'm sorry you're not getting satisfaction tonight. The next item is 3.02, which is a request for abatement of taxes by Timothy Muir at 52 North Cove Road. Are we ready for a motion on this item? Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. I'd like to make a motion similarly to deny the requested abatement and also ask for the floor back after a second.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Hartnett. And go ahead, Councilor Mason.
First, I'd like to start by asking whether the homeowner is present before starting the discussion. Seeing no one raise their hand. This one is just as confusing and complex as the last one. It's also come to my ear, I believe there's some new information that I'm not sure whether Ms. Sturdivant is here or Ms. Blackwood, but let me give a brief introduction and then maybe turn it over, Eileen. So this is a homeowner who was requesting an abatement in the amount of $3,702.05. which I believe also is penalties and interest. He has paid the underlying tax. He came seeking an abatement based on the statutory basis that it was manifestly unjust that the city had assessed a tax. The record before us showed that this was a homeowner who was involved in a long-going dispute with the city attorney's office regarding non-compliant property. During that time period, or at some point during that time period, he basically stopped paying his taxes. Ultimately, a decision was rendered in favor of the city's position. There was a fine assessed. However, during that process, it does appear he became, or his financial situation became challenging. Also, because of the flood, there was some revised assessment as to his principal residence. However, the committee heard this twice. The first time was on the manifestly unjust, and it was the sense of the committee at the time that what he had not demonstrated, basically he lost before and his position was not true, and that did not give, you can't stop paying your taxes just because you're fighting with the city. However, the committee did ask for some additional information of its own volition on the financial ability and whether there was a different criteria under which possibly abating. We did get some financial information, and then there was a dissent at the committee as to whether to grant based upon that. So with that, it came to my attention today that there's some additional information that maybe Eileen or that City Attorney Blackwood could inform the committee. It's also my understanding that this is a de novo hearing, so we can hear whatever new evidence. Is that true, or is that, yes?
That's right.
Okay. So, Mayor Weinberger, with your permission, I'd like to turn it over to the City Attorney.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that folks understood, because it sounded from what I had heard there was some misunderstanding about this. This was an enforcement action that the city undertook, and it was a long, involved process that took many months, and the homeowner had a number of opportunities to resolve their issue, and eventually the court agreed to impose a penalty upon them for their failure to comply with the zoning ordinances of $1 a day. It amounted to $10,000 plus, so you can see how long-standing the violation was. There were in addition, after the fine the penalty was imposed, there were further proceedings. Eventually, the situation was corrected for a while. It apparently, it involved a lot of property out in the yard. It was moved to a different property outside of the city of Burlington. It has apparently now been moved back, and we are about to begin further enforcement proceedings on the property. So it just felt to me that was, and I was hoping maybe if the applicant would be here that, they could respond however they wanted, but it felt like information you all should have.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Okay, Councilor Busher.
So I read this and I had difficulty understanding all of this, even after the brief information that was just shared. So for someone that's just looking at this information in the packet, what was and this is the information provided by the appellant trying to come forward, saying that they had paid the fine and it cost more than $12,000 to make the improvements to bring the property into zoning compliance. Can I just ask a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor? The first one is, did he pay the fine? Is that true? And did the property come into zoning compliance?
Yes to both, and they did pay the fine. They did come into compliance for a while. It's just that we are now beginning another enforcement proceeding because we've heard that there has ceased to be
if I can ask again another question, I'm sorry. So then they talk about the flood and the money that the city received from, I was going to say FEMA, but Vermont, I guess, and that the city refused to allocate funds to them based on their ongoing zoning litigation. Is that true?
I don't know anything about that.
So to me, that was incredibly disturbing. I wasn't sure legally how this all came together. I still don't understand it. I think if a person has significant destruction from an event that they didn't cause, like a flood, then to me, I would have felt that, okay, now they're in another category, and I wasn't sure where I was with this process at that point in time. And so I felt unprepared to vote on this because I just don't understand this.
Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. Just to sort of address, there was a lot of information presented, and it was somewhat challenging to try and figure out what was relevant and what was not. So at least the way we looked at it, and I appreciate others may look at it differently, was first addressing, is this manifestly unjust? Is the assessment of the penalties and interest manifestly unjust? Hypotheticals or other facts where we have done that are where property was flooded, destroyed by fire. You know, there was some cataclysmic event that wiped out, and we felt it was unfair to tax you for use of a residence when it was not present. So at least in my analysis, no, there was not, you know, you can't stop paying your taxes just because you're fighting with a city. So for me, the conduct I did not believe it was manifestly unjust. Then we got into analysis of whether there was an ability to pay. That was the secondary analysis in light of the hardship or the difficulty that was professed. And again, we were limited to the information presented to us. You know, it did appear that there was sufficient income, you know, combined with his spouse in order to pay this penalty and interest. So, and I respect Councilor Zhang and I may have disagreed on that analysis, but based on, you know, my analysis, there was an ability to pay, so he did not rise to, or this homeowner did not rise to the level of granting relief based on inability to pay. So that was, again, and I appreciate there's a lot more in there, but we did not, the homeowner wasn't there, so we didn't really get an opportunity to delve into some of that information.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I, I'm sorry, can I just, so what I'm trying to do is figure out the sequence of events. So there was a fine paid, there was a zoning violation, came into compliance. Then there was, and I'm not sure that I'm saying this in the right order, then there was the flood, and the destruction to some aspect of the house. It seemed like he states they were underwater for 6 weeks. So without access to any of the grants from VEMA, then even though the ability to pay might have been there, if you're trying to save your home, I'm trying to figure this out. So I don't know how to piece it all together. I really don't. And so then, when did the property fall out of compliance again? So is that relevant or not? Because now we're in litigation with the city again, so I'm trying to figure this out.
I recognize Attorney Blackwood to
Yeah,
try to
I mean, I can
address this.
comment on some pieces about this because I don't know anything about the flood part of it, but the flood, he's talking about the flood of 2011, and the enforcement action was filed, I think, in 2013. It was resolved in court in 2015. I believe the fine was paid in early 2016.
Okay.
Certainly long after the flood.
Okay, so the flood happened before the other aspects. I'm sorry, if everyone else knows the sequence, I apologize, but I'm just trying to figure this out. So then the committee looked at his ability to pay based on him paying the penalties, the flood was over, and so when did he fall out of compliance again with zoning?
Just recently, and we are just beginning dealing with that again.
Okay. Okay, now, I guess now the question at hand was, does he have the ability to pay? Okay. Thank you. I think I'm back on track. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilor Shannon.
I think inability to pay is often a difficult, it's difficult for us to determine because there's so much that goes into that. These things are complicated and sometimes we cannot prove affirmatively one way or the other, so we're left to our best judgment on that. The evidence of the foreclosure tells me this is somebody in severe, dire financial situation. And certainly they well might meet that bar of inability to pay. The becoming, but if they're going back to where they were with the violation of the zoning ordinance, they're going to, you know, it's going to be Groundhog Day, and we're going to be in the same situation again where they're going to have to pay another fine, which they can't afford, and that's going to lead to foreclosure again, and we write off this money. We can actually get this money through the foreclosure process potentially, and if this property owner isn't going to rectify the other situation, I see us potentially granting this abatement, then it ends up, he gets foreclosed on anyway. So I appreciate that this situation is so dire that it's possible that this abatement is what's standing between this homeowner and foreclosure. But I would like to know that can we make a contingent on being compliant? Can we make an abatement contingent on being compliant with the zoning, you know, remedying the violation that exists? I know we have, in fact, put many contingencies on abatements in the past. We have done payment plans or. Yep. And we also can postpone action, waiting, you know, giving him a period of time to become compliant, I believe.
I mean, if my sense would be it might make sense for you to postpone action because Councilor Buscher's come up with a bunch of questions that I don't know the answer to. Maybe it would be helpful for us to get some of these answers, get you a little bit more complete picture of how these things, because I don't even know what he's talking about when he talks about some money from VEMA to the city that the city wouldn't give out to him. I mean, right. and he's talking about having been in forbearance with his mortgage company for a long time. But I don't, and then there's something about a foreclosure order, but that certainly isn't something I recall seeing in the court record, which would have been all around the same time he's talking about. So maybe you decide to postpone and let us get some more information. Back to you.
I would like to move to postpone to our April meeting. Which April meeting? It's kind of a big meeting, yeah. So our first regular meeting in April.
Second, oops. Second, third.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Buscher. We believe motion to postpone is a debatable item, so is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Jang.
Yes, so I just wanted to know the reason why we need to postpone this. If you can articulate it very clearly to us to understand, because maybe there are some new information, and to me, basically they all the same. We are not talking about the new zoning uncompliance, but we're talking about what has passed, the application that the person brought here. There was a disagreement between Councilor Shannon and I due to the fact that this individual has been paying also, has been with litigation with the city for a very long time. And also we do understand that this individual is in a fixed income. He's receiving $1,100 as SSI, Social Security
Point of order.
benefit or something.
Councilor Shannon.
We're only debating the postponement, not the merits, correct?
Correct.
So, yes. Okay, but I would have really just have the time to also articulate why we needed to do this. I think things just went a little bit fast with us getting the other councillors a chance to discuss this case.
So, Councillor Jang, just to be clear, are you suggesting certain information that you're hoping that the city attorney and other staff produce if there is a postponement?
I mean, yeah, I am against postponing it. I would like us to take action.
Okay, you're against postponing. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to postpone? Okay, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of postponing this item until the April 16th meeting, which may not have been the original motion, but I think it should be the correct.
Yeah,
correct
first regular
motion.
meeting in April.
Yep. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, there are two objections from Councilor Hartnett and Councilor Jang, and the balance of the Board of Abatement of Taxes votes aye, and so the item is postponed until April 16th, and if there's no objection, the Board of Abatement of Taxes is adjourned at 9:09 p.m., and it goes back to you, President Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, do you want to run part of this since I ran part of yours previously?
I intend to sit right here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will reconvene the regular city council meeting now and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 6.01 on the deliberative agenda. And that is a ordinance regarding offenses and miscellaneous provisions. We'll go to the chair of the ordinance committee, Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. I'd like to make a motion to waive the second reading, adopt the ordinance, and ask the floor back after a second.
Seconded by Councilor Busher. Councilor Mason, you have the floor back.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. So this is something we've been sort of dancing off and on with for the last 3 or 4 meetings. I'm not going to go through the same statement that I've made before, other than to say, in the context of the review of the quality of life, which we're going to be tackling, the city attorney brought to the ordinance committee a number of ordinances that were either unconstitutional based on the Reed case, no longer really being enforced, such as the cruising ordinance that is currently on the books. The ordinance committee spent a fair amount of time with the city attorney walking through each of the proposed repeals, and basically got confirmation that basically the actionable conduct was still actionable under alternative provisions of our ordinances. So I will say I know the one that has generated a little bit of discussion relates to the aggressive panhandling. We have received advice from the city attorney's office that under the Reed case that actually impacted what we did on the Planned Parenthood buffer zone. You know, panhandling is speech, and there, you know, this is happening across the country, that aggressive or panhandling ordinances are being repealed. The committee, separate and apart from this, has asked the city attorney to possibly explore an alternative on the abutting streets. That is not yet ready for prime time and is not really for this, other than to say it will be forthcoming if we get the advice from the city attorney that we expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. Back open for discussion to the city council. Any city councilor wish to weigh in? All right, all those in favor of passing this change ordinance, which repeals a number of ordinances which have been, as Councilor Mason has described, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We will now move to, thank you, Mr. Chairman, on that smooth ordinance. Item number 6.02 is a resolution, policy development, reporting on Chapter 21 of the city's codes of ordinance. Public Safety Committee. We will the Chair of Public Safety, Councilor Roof.
Yes.
Describe this for us and tell us what this is.
Yep. Well, I'll move 6.02 and after a second ask for the floor back for some quick comments.
Seconded by Councilor Moore. Councilor Roof, you have the floor back.
Thank you. So this resolution is coming to the council in response to the quality of life ordinance changes that were brought forward on the January 22nd meeting of this council. At that meeting, if we can remember, the ordinance change was warned incorrectly, which warranted a slight delay in action. Also at that meeting, there was an issue brought forth by way of a proposed amendment that aimed to essentially require police measure and note the distance of the nearest bathroom facility in violations of Chapter 21. This came for both of those reasons to Public Safety Committee to be discussed. We did so in our February meeting, where we discussed the responsibility of the city in providing bathrooms and not unjustly or selectively enforcing Chapter 21. While no amendments were made to the Code of Ordinances as we received it, we did, however, address the issues brought forth by the amendment and its maker with the following actions. Number one, we'll be asking the police department to explore policy noting the location of publicly accessible bathrooms in instances of enforcing Section 21-24, and we'll report back to the council with that recommendation within 90 days. Number two, we'll be asking the police department to provide a status report to the Public Safety Committee in 2 years with information related to the enforcement of Chapter 21. The questions that will be included in that report can be found in the resolution. Finally, we are requesting that the administration develop, maintain, and publicize a record and location of publicly available restrooms with the intention of providing a system of facilities in aggregate that meet the public health needs of the broad community. I will note that this resolution was unanimously supported by other committee members, as well as Councilor Tracy, who was present, and Chief Del Pozo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roof. Discussion by the City Council. Hearing none, we'll move to a vote on this resolution. All those in favor of passage of this resolution, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Once again, passes unanimously. Thank you, Councilor Roof and the Public Safety Committee for that. We will move on. Item number 6.03 has been removed from the agenda, so we'll move to item 6.04. And this is the item regarding the mural issue. And if you'll remember back to the meeting when we discussed this previously, Councilor Jang's resolution basically became a report from City Attorney Blackwood. She has issued us a written report, and now we'll ask for City Attorney Blackwood to give us a synopsis of that report, followed, and then we'll take questions from the council for City Attorney Blackwood. That will be followed by the next item, 6.05, which is a resolution by Councilor Shannon, which action was postponed on that at the previous meeting to this date, the March 12th meeting. So we'll hear the report from City Attorney Blackwood and then go to the resolution. City Attorney Blackwood.
Thank you. I think we laid out some quick questions and answers at the beginning of our memo, and then further on in the memo you can fill in more information about this. But the quick questions were who owns the mural, because that makes a difference, who has the authority to do something, and there is only a verbal agreement with the building owner, and there was a draft agreement between the Church Street Marketplace Foundation and the artist that we did not find a signed copy of. But in any case, the foundation folks indicated that they believe that they had gifted or in some way given the mural to the city, and therefore our conclusion is that the city essentially owns the mural. If there's a decision to go forward, we may want to get something in writing from, for example, the foundation to just verify that as we move forward. So we may take some steps if that's how the council decides to move, but that was our conclusion, that we think we can legally move forward and do something. Now, what can we do? So the second question we had was what rights does the artist have? And the Visual Artists' Rights Act, called VERA in short, says that an artist can prevent any distortion, modification, or mutilation of a piece of work. So the question here is whether or not it can be modified, whether or not it can be removed or moved without destroying it or modifying it in any way. So, for example, I think the public comments about modification, we would need to get the artist's consent to do before we could modify, and essentially our recommendation is that we should be going to the artist and trying our best to get the artist's consent for whatever it is we try to do. That's going to be the safest legal way for us to proceed, no matter what we try to do. And There were also questions raised about what rights any of the donors who gave the money would have, and it appears they were given to a charitable organization. There were no, as far as we could find, there were no specific earmarks by anyone, so we don't see that the donors have any enforceable right. So given those are essentially the legal summary of where we are, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Questions from the City Council? Councilor Busher?
I don't have a question, but I want to give you a compliment. I understood this report, and from a city attorney to a non-attorney, it was very clear. It was formatted well. I very much appreciated it, and you substantiated and gave me more information about all the rights of the artist and where we are, and so really it was very well done. So I imagine this was a fair amount of work, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Other comments or questions for City Attorney Blackwood? Councilor Jang.
Yes, thank you again for the hard work. Looks like it was also your team. How many people worked on this report? Sorry.
Attorney Dexter Cooper did a lot of the research, and she talked to a lot of different people who assisted from the marketplace and other parts of the city that got us
And
information.
it sounds like now the city owns the middle. Is that correct for the record?
We believe that to be the case.
We believe, or we own the middle, or no? Sorry. Do we own the middle? The city of Burlington owns the middle now, or no?
We believe that the city of Burlington owns the mural. As I said, we will probably, assuming that you want to move forward with something, we'll probably take some steps to make sure that we solidify that a little more by getting the foundation to be clear that it does not believe it owns it.
Yes, I mean, I think my question is very specific and clear. Does the city of Burlington own the mural or no? Or the report is not complete yet?
The report is complete.
Is complete. So we own the mural, the city of Burlington owns the mural?
We are telling you we believe that we own it, but that we think we should take a step to make sure of that by getting some kind of release from the foundation.
All right, so I personally believe then, you know, we graciously and respectfully ask to get all the information, and it sounds like it was not only you, you had assistant who've been working on this as well. And I do believe this is very important, and this is very critical for us to have the right information before we make any action. And I do believe personally that it will be important to get the facts very right. So I have a couple questions, many questions, but I can come back to the second round. President.
Mr. Mayor, and then we'll go to Councilor Roof.
Yeah, I just, Councilor Jang, I think it's important that, and this happens too often in this setting, it is important that staff members of the City of Burlington be treated correctly, and to characterize you not having been given the right information is not a fair characterization of the exchange that just happened between you and the city attorney. The city attorney said she is giving you the best opinion based on substantial amounts of work, and depending on the action that is desired to go forward from here, additional steps would be necessary. It's not a question of her securing the right information or not, and I don't appreciate the way in which the question was phrased or the statement was made.
Yep. I apologize for that, city attorney.
Councilor Jang, you have to be recognized. So,
thank you.
So hold on, we'll bring you back, but Councilor, were you done, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, and we'll go to Councilor Roof, and then we come back to you, Councilor Jang.
Thank you.
I also have a question for the city attorney.
Sure.
I'll say that I did understand the answer that you provided to Councilor Jang. I appreciate that. It was clear. What's not clear is whether or not the artist was contacted through this report, and if so, what happened there?
The Church Street Marketplace personnel tried several ways to contact the artist, and the artist did not respond. However, in the interim, I'm sure you all saw that a newspaper reporter was able to contact the artist, and we have not gone back to try to do a follow-up post that newspaper report, wanting to see if we got a little more guidance from the council on how you want to proceed, because it seems to me the next step ought to be probably a contact to the artist that says, here's what we want to do. Do you, where do you stand on that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. We'll go back to Councilor Jang.
Thank you, and my apologies for, those reasons. But yeah, I think it is very important and very imperative because, as I said earlier, this is very crucial and it is very critical. And I think since January 2005 to now, maybe you were on vacation and you let your staff help you to get the right information. We are going to take action, and we are going to take action, but before we do that, we need the right information to the best of your abilities. But I do believe that it is important to use some words such as this is accurate or this is not accurate. But to me, as an English language learner, I mean, when I hear we believe, it does not really give the right answer. And that's just what I'm trying to get to with you, to say, do we own the mural or not? But it sounds like it's not clear yet whether we own the mural or we don't own it. Is that accurate, City Attorney?
Point of order.
Point of order, Councilor Shannon, what is your point of order?
I think the city attorney has answered the question repeatedly to the best of her ability, and I don't know that it's productive or appropriate to kind of continue to badger on the same question.
I think that is a point well taken. I think that Councilor Jang, that city attorney has covered that. I appreciate the question. I do appreciate the question, but I think that City Attorney Blackwood has made clear that she's given her best analysis of this, which is that she believes that we own the mural, but she thinks that we need to do a little more work to make sure. I think that's I think that.
Yep. Can I finish?
Councilor Jang?
Yeah. Yeah, so can I then say it in a different way? Okay? When will we get that information?
City Attorney.
Yeah, I think what we need is we wanted some direction from you that yes, you would like to move forward with something, and then we will go to the foundation and ask them for a release of any rights, any residual rights they think they may have. And we'll put that document together and prepare that.
Right. Yep. You all set, Councilor Jang, or do you have?
No, I have a lot of questions.
And I'm not sure you have to wait for that document to do anything. Just to be clear, I'm not sure you have to wait for me to do that next step.
We do have a resolution coming up, an action resolution, so there can be further debate about this after that. Councilor Mason. Councilor Mason passes. Councilor Hartnett?
Can I address Councilor Name with a question?
You can go through the council chair, and I can recognize Councilor Jang if we.
President Wright, would you ask him if is he considering postponing action on the task force until he has the full answer from the city whether we own it or not? I think it makes sense. That's why I'm asking.
We will. If Councilor Jang decides to do that, that will be up to him to make that motion. He has the ability to make a motion to postpone action. We have not heard that yet, but that will come when the resolution comes up if Councilor Jang or anyone else decides to postpone action because of that reason. Okay. We will go to Councilor Busher.
I'm going to pass.
Councilor Busher passes. I've been waiting for that for 25 years. Go to Councilor Mason. Back to Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. I think the confusion, if I may try, is that it's not a question that hasn't been asked. This is not lack of diligence. The confusion, I think, relates to the fact that there's an unsigned agreement. There's the fact that the city was making payments. So it's not a question of if more questions had been asked or more people had done work that we'd know the answer to that. What I'm hearing from the city attorney is, based on their analysis, we believe we own it. However, we think in order to confirm that, we would like to present an assignment or some document to the foundation, which is a separate legal person, asking them to assign any and all rights to the works to the city. That would address, there's no question who would own it if they sign that piece of paper. We have no reason to think the foundation won't sign that piece of paper, but they were looking for some guidance from us as to which direction to go before preparing that document and presenting it to the foundation to sign. So that's my assessment of that. So I see no reason at this time to delay moving forward with the task force or some other type of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. I think that we should be ready to move into the action item now. So let's, Councilor Jang?
Yeah, I have multiple questions.
But we will, I think there'll be more opportunity when we take up the resolution. Do you have something you need to address still now before we move to that?
All of the questions that I have, get ready, and they all based on the report we received from the city attorney. So I would like you to please allow me to ask them all.
Okay, go ahead and proceed, Councilor Jang.
Thank you. Yes, so thank you again. Thank you very much. And, you know, you talked about VIRA, visual arts, and in the report, especially the question number 2, there is one said, the prejudicial to this honor and reputation of the artist. And I would like you to please explain that more, I mean, specifically that line.
The part about the harm to the reputation of the artist?
Yes.
We did a little bit of looking at case law on what that means, how that's been interpreted to mean, and it's a pretty subjective standard, and the courts have looked at, and I think I gave you all an indication of a very recent incident that happened where a developer removed a lot of graffiti from a building, and 21 graffiti artists were awarded a fairly large sum in the court case for having removed that without the artist's permission, because the artists themselves deemed that it would harm their reputations. So there is it is a complicated, well, I shouldn't say it's complicated. It's a legal standard that's going to depend on what the artist comes in and says about their reputation and what the court says as to whether adding new figures, for example, to this would in some way harm the artist's reputation. My recommendation in this is if there is a decision that folks want to move forward with looking to modify the mural in some way, that we should try to contact the artist and find out what the artist's position is on that. It may be that the artist says, no, that won't harm my reputation, that's fine.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's clearly said that the artist had the right under the Visual Arts Right Act to prevent any distortion, mutilation, modification of a work that will be prejudicial to his honor or reputation, and to prevent destruction of any artwork. And also, on the report, you also mentioned somewhere that the art techniques that was used here is not visual art, but it was more like a trompe l'oeil art. And I just wanted to make sure if you can explain it to us. If Vera also applies to trompe l'oeil, the art technique that were used for this mural.
We found at least one case where the courts have applied Vera to trompe l'oeil, and trompe l'oeil is essentially, the definition of it is a visual art that attempts to take in a two-dimensional form and make it appear as if it's three-dimensional. So given all of that, it appeared to us and our conclusion was that yes, this form of art, because you had raised this question to me ahead of time, so we did look at it, and it was our conclusion that trompe l'oeil would indeed be covered by Vera.
It would be covered by Vera. Thank you. And what type of, and somewhere you said the artist will need to be given a proper notice. And is it 10 days, 3 days, 30 days, 90 days?
Well, we have to provide it depends what we're giving notice of. If we're giving him notice of modification, of removal, of destruction, et cetera. So there are various, one option is a reasonable period, and another is there's a 90-day period under one section of the law.
Okay. So just to come to a conclusion, I don't believe that this report is clearly accurate to what we need to know in order to go to the next step. And I really would like for the city attorney to please, come back with a couple of more concrete steps. And one of them would be to find the time to speak with the artist about this issue and also try to get his thought, clearly and present it to us. The second thing would be also to make sure that the presentation will include that, yes, the city owns this mural or the city does not own the mural. And also to make sure that we have a clear understanding that Vera really protects this art technique that was used at the Everybody Love the Parade mural. And also I think it would be very important to find that contract and also to make sure that we have the signed contract here and a document included in the report as well. So there are 4 or 5 main things that I really would like to see in order for us, for me specifically, to know that we received an accurate report about the things that we nicely tasked you on the 25th. And again, thank you very much for this hard work for you and also for your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Councilor Roof?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the promised length of display. Actually, my question is, I think I'm reading it correctly. I know there's a few different things at play. There's Vera, there's the Hardy contract, there's also the RFQ. Could you just give a layman's terms breakdown of where we are at with the promised length of display?
The RFQ was definitely put out, and it included something that said 5 year, it would be displayed for 5 years, and that the display was not a contractual term. There is then a draft contract that we have found in city records with the foundation that has 10 years in it, and there were apparently some comments made to sponsors that talked about 10 years because that was what the artist indicated, that the artist felt the materials and everything would last.
Gotcha.
But our conclusion of all of that is that that because we don't have a signed contract and we don't have and the promises, if they really were promises to donors, were not made in the form of being binding promises that in some way means the city has to go by the 10-year date. And as we've noted, we don't have a signed copy of the contract.
Understood. Thank you.
All set, Councilor Roof? Thank you. Any other counselor for Attorney Blackwood? Okay, thank you, Attorney Blackwood, for that report. And we will now move to the action item 6.05, a resolution by Councilor Shannon that had been moved to this meeting, postponed from the previous one. Go to Councilor Shannon to move this. Councilor Shannon.
Yes, I move to adopt the resolution and ask for the floor back after a second.
Seconded by Councilor Busher. Councilor Shannon, tell us what this resolution does. And
thank you. I think this resolution recognizes that the Everyone Loves a Parade mural is not as inclusive as we expect in our community, but that there might be a variety of different solutions and remedies to address that situation. So it asks for the following, to create a 7-member mural task force, and I'll just read segments of this. This diverse panel should include individuals who have a wide array of perspectives, including that of the New American, Abenaki, and other diverse communities, the Church Street Marketplace Commission, mural donors, and the arts community, and that the city will provide staff to the task force and run an open application process. One of the things that I've considered, if this should pass, I think it would be helpful if the city could create an application that people could fill out that specifically addresses those diverse communities that are listed and ask people if they're, because we wouldn't necessarily know from an application if they fit into this category or that. So I think it would be helpful to have that on the application as a way of determining that. And also charges the task force with considering what the options might be for the mural, keeping in mind the rights of the artist, the property rights, principles of public art, and other important criteria by which this should be judged. I personally hope that that what might come out of this, as well as kind of an additional part of the discussion, is to consider what our process should be going forward to avoid the mistakes that we've made. I think it's much harder to correct a mistake once it's done, and there's a huge investment in something like this. And it will be better if we can head it off before all that money is spent and before we make the mistake that perhaps makes people feel badly for a variety of reasons, one of which might be race, but there are other issues as well. And I'll be happy to come before the task force, or maybe I'll be able to participate to talk about that more. But I hope that the council will support this so that we can move forward together on an issue that can be very divisive. I think it's better that we try to find some common ground, and I think the task force will give us that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Shannon, will the task force be staffed by the city attorney's office, or city attorney's office will provide guidance for the task force?
It says provide staff support. I don't think it specifies the city attorney's office, but that there will be city staff support.
Okay, and it would be the expectation the city attorney would provide legal guidance for the task force, depending on what route the task force might decide to go with the mural?
That was our office's expectation, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, open it up to discussion, and then we'll go with Councilor Hartnett first. Councilor Busher is up next, and anybody else who wants to get in the queue?
Thank you, President Wright. So I was really on the fence whether I supported the task force, and ultimately have come down to the side where I do think we need a task force. However, I'm in hopes that we don't remove the mural, because I think it's important that it stays, and I agree that it needs to be more inclusive. I'm going to make a pitch to Councilor Dang. I understand where he's coming from with those questions. I do feel that it would be better if we had those questions answered before we move forward with the task force. I think he makes a good point. However, back to Councilor Shannon's point, she makes a good point, and my hopes that this task force will go much beyond this particular painting, and that it will look at the entire process moving forward on how we will approach this in the future. I doubt this is going to be the last public painting that we have here in the city of Burlington, and I think it would be important. So I think there's a lot of work the task force could do in the meantime before we maybe get the final answer. So I'd hate to postpone the task force's work that they could actually get started on, and then in that process come back with some of the final answers that Councilor Dang is looking for, because I think it's important that we have those. It would be nice to know for sure that we own it. It sounds like we do, but I would like it to be official, and it certainly would be nice to know the artist's feelings. I think the task force would want to know that, and I think that's important. So, but I would hate to stop the momentum that we have going now with this task force, and I think there's some work they can do other than just simplify, just to identify what we're going to do in this particular case. So I am hopes that we move forward tonight. I will support the task force, and one other thing I will add, I hope the work is done fairly quickly, that this doesn't drag out through the summer months or for a long period of time. We have a lot of important issues in this city that need to be addressed. Not that this isn't important, it is, but I feel like the real work of the city ahead of us is really critical, And I hope that this doesn't bog us down, because I think there's a way that we can get to a great outcome here and have everyone satisfied. So I'm hoping that the timeline is very short with the task force. Thank you.
Thank
Point
you,
of order?
Point of order, Councilor Shannon.
I realized I was remiss in not clarifying that I was moving the revised version of the resolution, and the revised version does have different dates, noting that in the revised version that I moved, the date to report back to the council is July 16th.
Okay, that's the revised version with the revised timeline?
Yes, and that's the one that I was intending to
You're
move,
moving
so
the revised
therefore
version.
what I moved.
Okay, we'll go with that. Thank you, Councilor Shannon. It sounds like a sticking point here is going to be whether the points of more information need to be done before the task force or can be done during the task force work. So I think that maybe before I go to City Councilor Busher, briefly to City Attorney Blackwood, then back to Councilor Busher.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is what additional work has to be done is going to be in relation to the questions and direction of the task force. So I see it there. We can certainly move ahead with getting a written document or release from the foundation to solidify the city's ownership.
Okay, thank you. City Councilor Busher.
Thank you. So, I certainly support this resolution. I wanted to support it when it was on the agenda the last time, because I felt that the community had become divided around this topic, and I felt that this was a process that could potentially bring us together. I feel that, I listened to the public forum, as all of you did, and the lady that spoke about art history and how art is a snapshot in time. We're not a perfect society. That was a snapshot in time. It wasn't, I didn't believe it to be historical. I believed it to be representative of Burlington and some of the people that we recognized more currently than in the past. But I've learned a lot by this conversation. So to me, it is so important that we get the community talking about this, not just the people that volunteer or get appointed to this task force, but the whole community. Some may see the mural as a mistake, and I don't like those little phrases like a mistake turns into an opportunity, but in this sense, it's going to turn into a dialogue. I'm sorry, I get a lot of those little quips at work, and so anyways, but it's going to turn into a dialogue that is really an important one. For all of us. And so I don't want to delay that dialogue. It's begun, it's happening around us. We need to be a part of it. We need to be included in it. Not that we need to direct it, but we need to be part of it so that we can take the right response. We can do what the community wants us to do after having a conversation about the mural and whether it should stand or be modified or whatever the suggestions are from this conversation. When we were talking about the city attorney's communication and the need to reach out to the artist and the fact that the media had found the artist and had some kind of communication, to me, I want us to make sure that this resolution goes to the artist so that the artist is aware that these are the steps we're beginning to take, and we want the artist to be involved too if he would like to be. So I think that that's so important that we include everybody that wants to take part in this. I'm hoping that, my hopes are that the meetings will occur at times where the public can usually weigh in, and that's difficult for me to say because sometimes people are more apt to be able to come to a noontime meeting, and it depends on who you are and where you work, etc. But I think that there needs to be a variety of times to make sure that we do capture as many people as possible. So I'm very supportive of this, and I'm hopeful that this will be more than a discussion about the mural, as everyone said. It's a discussion about who we are, who we include in our community, who we have excluded, and who we want to make sure we don't exclude, and anticipating the next group of people that come to our community and want the community to reflect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. We'll go to Councilor Moore, and then to Councilor Dieng. Councilor Moore. No, Councilor Moore Councilor Moore, you have the floor, and then we're going to Councilor. Oh, you're passing. I didn't hear you. We need to speak in the microphone so I can hear that. But Councilor Moore has passed, and we'll go to Councilor Dieng.
Thank you, President Wright. Yes, I think it is very important for all of us again to know why we're here, to think about why we're here. We are elected officials. People in this community put their trust on us. We might not agree with each other most of the time. We might not agree with each other most of the time. But we have a moral obligation to work together. It is our obligation to respond to the people that elected us, all of us. And we will never be able to try to solve a problem, an issue, with the same level of thinking that we used to create them. In 2004, we all know that the Church Street Marketplace, they have a statement of goodwill. In that statement, they use so many different examples on how discrimination is hurting and how they don't want it there. Despite all of that, a mural was created with a lens that took equity away. And again, we want to create another task force. We were elected to make sure that every single person who live and work here are safe. They feel safe, they feel respected, they feel part of the process. This has been a problem for so long. It never came to the table for people to discuss. Alberta Paterka raised this concern. A white person, activist, he raised this concern. And now we are here trying to take the concern, the issue, under the rug. I don't think that's fair. And I don't think that we do understand how the intention was pure, maybe. It was so pure. We want to celebrate. This is the name of what we call Everyone Love the Parade. Everyone love the parade. The name, just the title of that piece of art. Everyone. Some people who don't see themselves brought the concern up here, and now we're trying to put it under the rug. I don't think it's fair. We cannot move forward with any other resolution until we get the right answers from the city attorney. There are a couple of things that are missing. We need to know. And once we know all of them, right, a task force we can bring a task force forward. If I had the power, that whole alleyway will become a piece of art, because we are known as Burlingtonian, as artists. We are known as community members. We care for each other. We value, we have many things that we value. We value the lake, we value our elected officials, we value all of them. The person who was just right here, explained how an African American, how the Buffalo Soldiers, the historic, all of that, the art, the piece of art is still there. And it is reminding the resident of this city, most of them, that you do not belong. And I think it is very important sometime even among us. We send signals. We talk about stuff that maybe you cannot understand if you are not a person of color. When we talk about discrimination, you cannot understand it. When we say we are discriminating women, you cannot understand until you're a woman. We cannot understand. And as elected officials, it is our moral obligation, knowing that now 30% of our students are people of color. And this is used as an opportunity for learning, for growth. We want to take it and put it under the rug. From taking it away to be a ballot item question to moving it around, because my resolution that I introduced had a panel into it, had a task force into it. But we played around until, I don't think that's all of that is fair. We cannot talk about a task force until we get all the right information that we nicely, respectfully ask the city attorney to do so. We are talking about a piece of art that we don't even know if the contract exists. The reporters can go to Canada and find the artist. Why can't we find it and talk to him? I think all of those are very important things that we need to talk about. We know visual arts, it's protected by VIRA, but we don't know if this specific art is also under that protection. A lot of things are unknown, and we want to solve a problem without getting to the roots. The roots is we know everything that is legal. And again, if I had the power, the whole alleyway would become a piece of art. And we have local artists, international muralists who play all over the world, and they reside right here. And we also do know that before even this piece of art here, there was another piece of art, and it was included on the report. Was that person received any notification about, we're going to take your piece of art down, we want to put another one? Do we know all of that? That person came here one day, public forum, spoke here in front of all of us. You know? Yeah, I really do think that we need to pay extra attention. We need to open our hearts. We need to listen to each other. We need to hold our hands. We need to create a better future for what's coming next, the next generation. It's not easy. It is not easy because it is discriminating, it is systematic, it is structural, but we together, I believe Burlington can lead the world. This is not maybe hurting most of the people. It's not. But it is important for me. I will not be supporting this resolution, and I do believe it is important before we move forward to get the right answers, and then we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jang. I'm going to go to Councillor Moore just to caution that sort of what like Councillor Hartnett said earlier, which you can vote against, that's up to each councillor. You can vote for or against the resolution, or if you can vote to just defeat this resolution if you want, or if you feel that you want to postpone action, that is a different course of action that you could take. But just to put that out there. So we'll go to Councillor Moore now.
Thank you. So I will be supporting this because I think, while I understand Councillor Jang's points, I think that regardless of whether we own the mural, regardless of what the answers to those questions are, we're going to want to move forward in some way. And so that's why I'm supporting this without those answers. And I don't know, I don't see how we're sweeping this under the rug. It doesn't mean that's not happening. Surely well-intentioned people have done that before. So I don't want to say that you're not accurate in that. Sorry, I spoke straight to the Councillor Jang. And maybe I don't see that because of privilege. That's possible. So I just want to acknowledge that. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Hartnett.
Thanks. I don't know what it is to be like a person of color. I never walked in their shoes, and I don't pretend to know that. And I think anyone does is kidding themselves. So I will say that right up front. But what I do take objection to, that for years, that this council or this administration or previous administrations don't care about people's safety. Like, we do such a great job in this city. And the city council has done tremendous work in this area and many different areas to make the assertion that members of this council, this administration, or previous administrations have not made it safe or a welcoming city here in Burlington. It's just not accurate. It's not true, and I take that personally. We've done a tremendous job in this city over the last 20 years of making this city welcome to everybody. And we have opened our arms, and we've done great things in this city. And just recently, when Donald Trump has been elected, this administration, this council stood up and made sure that everyone should feel safe in this city. And if you didn't, we reassure you, we've done great work in this city. Are we perfect? No. But for someone to sit here and make the assertion that this city council somehow has not acted in a way that we don't welcome people and that we don't people feel safe in this city is not responsible to make. It's not a fair statement to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hartnett. Other councilors? Councilor Shannon, then Roof.
I take great offense at the idea that the intention of this resolution is to sweep anything under the rug. In fact, what this resolution will do is it'll bring more people into the process. So it won't just be the people at this table. It will be a more inclusive process, and we'll get input from a variety of viewpoints that are not currently at this table. And that's the intention. It's a public process. To say sweep it on the rug, it makes it sound as if we're doing this behind the scenes, which is not at all the case. These are public meetings. They'll have minutes. They might have Channel 17 coverage, and they'll have community members. So I think that that is not an accurate framing of what we are trying to do here. And I also take offense at the repeated claims that the city attorney has not come up with the, quote, right answer. And I think that the answer is that there are some things that are not completed at this point. It is certainly not her fault that they are not completed. She has described to us the state of where things are today, and that is the best that she can do. Her review was thorough, and it was clear to the point, to the extent that where we are can be clear. There, depending on what direction we need to go in, depending on the input both from the task force, if I hope we go in that direction, and ultimately the decision of this body, that will inform what additional work needs to be done so that we can move forward. And I hope, again, that we will move forward with an inclusive task force. That is the point.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Jang, you want the floor again?
Yes. Thank you, President Wright. And, you know, I think it is very important to clarify a couple of things. What I just said over here, again, I am not turning my back to what I said. And what I say, it's very true, which means that when I say that this city, we need to come together, need to work together, it does not mean this city has not been doing great things. If I am here today, sitting here, right, because the people of Ward 7 are saying Black Lives Matter. As an immigrant, a Muslim, only person of color at this council, which is a great and wonderful thing that we welcome inclusion, diversity, and equity. That's so accurate, and I want to make that very clear. But what I cannot understand, or what you want to put in my mouth that I did not say, is this. The member of this council, as I said, this is not easy. We are leaders, and when there is a problem, there should not even be a task force to solve it. This is a problem that people brought up here. We need to take action, and when we have to do it, when we have information necessary, those informations are not together fully yet. They not, right? We don't see the contract. We haven't talked to we don't even, we think we own the middle. We don't know. All of that we don't know. How can we take action if we don't know? And why can't we take the action if we get all the information? Why do we need to take a mural task force? Again, what I'm saying is very clear and it's very simple. I'm sorry if I have an accent. I'm sorry if sometimes my words are very heavy, but I'm not backing down to what I said. And again, this is an inclusive city, and we said no to Jeff Sessions, Weinberger. Our gate, that's Vermont. This is Vermont, this is Burlington. We include people, we love them, and we elected a black person here. But when we have this type of discussion, what I'm saying, don't push it in the rug. Let's plan a task force. A task force was created to bring this problem. And their intention was not to bring it. We made a mistake. And as elected officials, if we see it, we respond to it right away. We need the right information. And Attorney, again, thank you for your work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Jang. Are we ready for no, Councilor Mason.
I'll be brief. I will be supporting this. I respectfully disagree and believe that a task force is a way to generate more discussion and greater input. We just went through an election where I didn't hear anyone campaigning on less transparency or less public input. In fact, I think we all heard very much the opposite. So, and their accusation that all decisions were being made by a small group of people at the city. So I support a group that's going to do more reach out and be composed of members who aren't sitting at this table to help us through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. Councilor Roof.
I'll also be brief. I'll be supporting this resolution, namely just for a lot of reasons that were discussed, but also I've had, I'm not sure about anyone else, but 3 people reach out to ask when they could start applying for the task force. And I'll just make note of the timing. I believe applications will be due by April 19th, I believe. 16th, thank you. And so there's plenty of time between now, if this does pass, and the application date, additional time. Well, we have to go through the process of appointing and then getting the work up and running. It'll probably won't be until mid-May. So I look forward to the additional information from the city attorney, and believe that a lot of those answers will be in by the time this committee, this task force rather, gets to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roof. I'm going to give the mayor the final word, unless somebody is dying to speak after.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. I just wanted to note I appreciated the tone and the reason that was articulated in Councilor Jang's final point here on his frustration for why we cannot just take action to be done with something that it appears, and from past discussions, I think he thinks the decision, the choice of what should be done is quite clear. I think that's a frustration probably all of us have had as members of city government. We want action, we want to be able to move forward with it. In this case, I respectfully disagree with Councilor Jang that the course of action is completely clear, or moreover, that even if we had some kind of consensus on this council, that the decision made on this council and with the approval of the administration would be received well and accepted by the public without additional process. My sense is that this issue is actually quite polarizing within the community at this point, and the reason I have supported the creation of a task force is in the hope that this group will work hard. It will be composed of people who represent a broad array of viewpoints and are respected in the community, and that they will help the community move through what is currently a fairly polarized discussion. I hope which is more broadly accepted and actually leads to the kind of progress that Councilor Busher referenced earlier. I think that is a possible outcome here, and I am hopeful the council will act tonight so that we can get started with this important work. And it is in no way, from my perspective, an effort to sweep anything under the rug. It is, in fact, the opposite, an effort to have a full discussion and reach some kind of broad community acceptance of what is currently a difficult issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we should have exhausted this debate and be ready to vote on the resolution to create a 7-member task force with the City Attorney's Office to get application process forms and to report back finally in July. Correct? Correct. All right. With that, all those in favor of passing the resolution, please raise your hands. And those opposed. That vote is 9-1 with 2 absent. And that resolution passes. So we will have created the 7-member task force. That completes that item. And we will now move ahead to item number 7, which is committee reports. Any committee chair that would like to report to the council on committee activity?
No? Good.
Seeing none, that finishes item number 7. We'll move ahead to item number 8, which is City Council General City Affairs. Mr. Hart, and then Mr. Dean.
Thanks. I just wanted to touch base and explain my no vote on the outdoor application type for. And again, and it's no disrespect to the members that sit on the committee, and I know there's one at least fairly new, but we've had a big discussion about outdoor seating here in the city, and we need to be consistent on how we address that, and whether it's 400 residents living around the area or whether it's 4, I think we need to follow some process to say, you know, we need your input, we need your involvement. And so I think we have to be more consistent when we are considering outdoor seating in our city. And I hope that we can do that. I don't think that's a new message here tonight. That's why I kind of voted no on the just bring it back. Like, it's been 2 years now, and we've had discussions around this table about how we're going to administer outdoor seating. So hopefully, you know, maybe that's something that committee can do in the upcoming year about a more consistent process in that regards. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Hartnett. Councilor Dean.
Well, I'd like to, I appreciate the input that we've just received from Councilor Hartnett, and as a new member of the City Council, someone who's been here just less than a year, I understand there's a history of this issue that I don't fully appreciate, and I think I need to hear more about this, and my committee does as well, as we think. I will say that I feel it's important that we have, there are other businesses who operate under similar rules, and that we, again, face the issue of equity for all businesses that have already been granted you know, these rights. And so we have to be careful in our discussions that we are fair. And I think we will address that on the committee level. And I wonder, I did miss the opportunity because I was in discussion with Councilor Roof.
Give us a committee report, Mr. Chairman Dean.
To mention that the local control subcommittee and the licensing committee will be meeting tomorrow afternoon here at 4:45 in the room 12 downstairs.
Great. Thank you for that report. Chairman Dean, any other councilor on general city affairs? Hearing none, we'll move on from that item to item number 9, which is a report from the president. Councilor, I talked to President Nodell. She has no update, so we'll move past item to item number 10, a report from the mayor on general city affairs. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Acting President Wright. I'll be brief as well. Just I want to say congratulations to all the councilors that were reelected, and as you saw Councilor-elect Pine here earlier as well, who will be joining the council, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue to work with this council, and look forward to the new organization day in April. And that's really all I had for tonight, Councilor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we might just add congratulations, Mr. Mayor, to you as well on a hard-fought election, and ready to move on now, and add my congratulations to every re-elected city council as well. With that, I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Hartnett moves it, seconded by Councilor Jang. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.